and the topic is African divinity and spirituality, the origin of Christianity. And not to be missed, event by the world-renowned historian Dr. Ashra Kwesi, and he will be coming to the studio very shortly in about an hour. He'll be here, so make sure you get out your tape recordings, your notebooks, your notepads if you're driving. I know it's polling, but make sure you get home or park up somewhere to get this knowledge, not to be missed. The venue is going to be at the Mahat Center, which is 366A High Road, Tottenham, London, N17 9HT. And that is tomorrow, a date. Make sure you get your tickets, get there early. Once again, it's Friday the 24th tomorrow, and the start of the so-called bank holiday 2019 tomorrow. Doors open 6 p.m. The start time is 7 p.m. Make sure you get there early. It goes on till 10 p.m. So it's definitely value for money. And, you know, when this man comes in into the country, you know, we have to sort of make them feel welcome and give them the attention. He's taking his time out to come down here. And once again, this is North London. Nearest tube for the South, West or East London is Seven Sisters. You can get a train via Bruce Grove, Tottenham Hill, and the normal buses are 149, 341, 496, etc., etc. Discount tickets are available from www.justtickets.com, or you can phone the box office on 07415 482167. Once again, it's 07415822167 or 0795 052821. Once again, 07956056052821. And we'll be giving more information on that. If you missed it this time, don't worry, we'll be going back on that. So it's going to be a fantastic topic. We'll be looking at, he's going to be telling us a little bit about, finding out a bit more about Dr. Ashra Kwesi. He's a renowned historian in the same category as the legendary Henry Clark, you know, Van Sertima. This man is up there with the greats. So do not underestimate the phone lines. We'll have the phone shut for a while so he can deliver his message. But once the phone lines are open, the number is 07944 31366. Once again, 07944 31366. So yeah, it's gonna be a fantastic event. And yes, Doug, you looking forward to this?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing from our elder, teacher, hear what to say, because, you know, these are the living legends now, you know what I mean? So definitely want to hear, have my pen, my book, and take some notes, you know. And as I said, that because he was here a couple of years ago. Was he here a couple of years ago as well?
Yeah, he's been there. He's regularly been doing the works for I think over 20 years. He's been doing it. Yeah. I've got to big up also the Facebook family. Also, Brother Minty, you know, has been promoting that as well, and everybody at PACM who's gone out to bring him down here. I think he's also going to be down in Birmingham. African Liberation Day is going to be down in Birmingham as well. So, you know, we're getting an exclusive interview, and I think what we need to do is in relation to everything that's going on in society. You know, we have to get back to our Kemetic Nubian spirituality, because in this Western Hemisphere, if you just look at the facts and the statistics and the evidence, it's like we're not wanted here. And, you know, especially with what's happening with our young people and the opportunities that we've been denied in every aspect, you know, it's not working for us here. So we really do need to get back to our African spirituality. We have to get back, because it seems like we've lost our African spirituality when we took on adopted their Trinity and left our forsaken and forgotten, our forefathers. This is why our youths are looking for fathers and 4 ways to make fortunes unfortunately, from those who have made fortunes from our forefathers. So this is. Could you repeat what I just said, Duggie? Because I can't remember it.
No, I can't remember.
You know, so we're serious. We have to really now take on the principles of our ancestors, and not just intellectually, because this is the problem. We're taking on the intellectual knowledge, but we're not converting it into spirituality. And there's a difference between knowing it in your head and actually being practitioners. So I look forward to. Well, I really look backward, because we've got to go backward. When you're going forward the ward. The ward is a place of care. And when you get a reward, they're just giving you some trophy, so you go back into the ward. If you look at the word ward, inside the word ward is the word war. Every war is fought over. If you turn the word war backwards, you see WAR is turn it backward, it's raw. So every war is fought over raw materials. Everything that is important is imported. So there's an attack on us as a people, you know. So we have to realize with our real eyes, or realize that the real lies. So realize that the real lies relies on our real eyes, not realizing that what's real hides under real lies. You know, so this is how we have to start to really grasp the knowledge that is going to be coming into the studio, and listen keenly. So we have to really take this information in, because it's not very often that we get a man of this caliber coming to visit us, and so we can actually become practitioners rather than thinkers or philosophizers of what is going to transpire here today.
They copied from the early pyramid text that I talked about earlier. This is how they got the reference to the Bible. Then you have other various Bibles, like the Babylonian Talmud, one of the most racist versions of the Bible. The Babylonian Talmud Bible was derived, some of its writings was derived from the Conference of Jamni in 90 AD, where they literally made up the Ham story. This is allegorical mythology written by white racist theologians, and we believe this to be an actual story. This is an allegorical racist myth of the whole Noah story and the curse story for the taking of the African Canaanites' land. But you come all the way down to the John Wycliffe version of the Bible, the Latin Vulgate version of the Bible, that was Rome's version of the Bible. Then you come down into what is known as the King James version of the Bible, written in 1611 AD. The King James, who rebelled against the Pope of Rome, and King James said, I'm the king of this day, we'll write our own Bible. And the Pope was against James because of his own promiscuous behavior. He also suffered from phagocytis. It's a very serious disease. It's still going on today. And then he decided to get Sir Francis Bacon, Henry Saville to write the Bibles for them. Now, it says on the first page of the King James version of the Bible that the book was diligently compared and revised. Diligently compared to what? To what I have just given you, the chronology going all the way back to African people who wrote Per M. Haru. That's why I said somebody knows something about.
And there's a clip from the great man himself talking about the origin of religion, or the religion of the Bible, how it transpired from ancient Kemet. I do believe we have some questions. I'm going to try and answer it in the great man's absence, so you have to excuse my lack of knowledge. So any questions in the studio in relation to religion or spirituality that you would like to start off the proceedings? Oh no, we've got the spin doctor here.
Spin the mic around.
Spin the mic around like a baton. You got, yes, family.
See where you are, you know.
Yes, greetings.
What introduction that was there?
Wow.
Sound like was it the third encounters of the third kind or something like that?
Yeah. When you started the show, I just wanted to ask. You mentioned the word bank holiday,
Right.
and I know you're the wordsmith, and I'm going to ask you.
Mm-hmm.
The word holiday is actually a religious ceremony.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of curious how it's now just become a bank holiday, and a bank can't have a holiday.
Well,
technically, money's always running. So when you use the word because it's holidays, holy day. Am I right or wrong? I'm just trying to play around with it. And we're saying this bank holiday, I don't even know what the holiday is in aid of. Does anyone know?
Well, it's in the actual word. It used to be a holiday, but now they're making money out of it. That's why it's called a bank holiday, because they're making money on every holiday. Christmas, Easter, the money's going in the bank on the amount of presents going in, so they can bank on making money in the bank. That's why they call it the bank holiday, because they can bank on you spending money. You see, and then the other thing, alongside a riverbank, you've got a current. You see, and whatever's current, like Christmas, Valentine's, whatever, and you see it because they've put it in front of you. You create currency, you see. So whatever's current, and you get your attention. Whatever you give your attention to, you give it life. So what's ever current, and you focus on it, you create currency. You create energy, and from the currency they make the money. So that's why it's a bank and currency. Whatever you see is current. What they see.
I just want to write on to what Supreme was saying. So Supreme, what you're saying is that I never quite follow what you're saying. So
I'm just looking at, when we really break down words, and we kind of taking it for granted that it's a actual holy day, and on a holy day, when we use the word holiday, even you mentioned it, he just came back from a holy day. That holy day means that I went to a religious ceremony. I never went for a break.
Okay.
So if something is holy and it's a holy day,
so example,
you will either be worshipping or praising something. Okay. So I'm just trying to when we banter the word holiday, I'm kind of thinking.
No, but it's quite interesting to say that, because what comes to my mind that all right, if you look at Boxing Day and Christmas Day, it's always the 25th is Boxing Christmas Day, and the 26th is the
no, the 26th is Boxing
Day, right? But you notice that Easter, the days are slightly they change a little bit.
Well, Easter's to do with the moon and the sun, if I'm correct.
Yeah, but the days it's not the dates would be different though, wouldn't it?
Yeah, because it's the when the moon sets or the sun rises.
All right,
it's not the actual date.
All right, then. So that's why I'm glad you mentioned it, because I know it's that. Yeah.
Right.
So you said the moon and the set. So it's set, yeah.
Yeah, I mean Easter is the moon or the sun. I don't know exactly which one it is. Is it the first full moon or the last full moon, or so that could move. But again, when we use the word holy day, and I'm pointing this to jammers, is that now a pagan festival that we are now taking part in?
Well, it is a pagan festival.
Yeah,
because we don't know the. We don't.
No,
really
but
know.
Are we as people? Because you mentioned the show, we have to get Kemetic, but yet we are now involved in pagan worshipping and holidays and joining in.
Yeah, but why is that though?
I could say it could be fashion, trend.
Yeah, but it's a bit deeper than that, and Joe's probably going to. It's where we've been conditioned and socialized over the years.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things the Honourable Dol Africa said that, we need to get back to our. What's where he said? There's a word he uses, not religion.
Spiritual?
Not spiritual. Our rituals.
Yeah.
We must practice our rituals. See?
And this is it. We're in the program now, so I would like to know, as a person who's looking for more knowledge, what is a practice that we should be practicing? Because Jam has mentioned we need to follow our Kemetic ways.
Well, I mean, Jam can speak. Brandon will probably speak for himself, but I mean, it's a question of what works for you, what you feel comfortable with, and start with that. Because if you can start way back, you might feel a bit weird. You know what I mean? But what you feel comfortable with, but like as Honourable Dol Africa said, that we need to start practice our rituals. Everybody practice for them rituals. Halloween, Christmas, East as feeling ritual as that. You know, Guy Fawkes and whatever. Where's our rituals? You know, so you know it's quite a chunk question you bring out to the table. There. Jammers, you want to roll it? And
right. If you look at a polar bear, and you look at a bear that's in a warmer climate, they're both bears, but the polar bear and say the bear that's in a hot environment have got a different physiology, different psychology, different mentality, and a different way of living. If you took the bear from a hot place and brought it into the Antarctic, it wouldn't have a clue what to do, and it wouldn't know have the survival instincts of the one that has its nut. Even though they're both bears, the bear that comes from the hot climate would not have the survival instincts of the polar bear, and it would have the environment would also have an effect on it. So its whole lifestyle is different from the lifestyle of the polar bear that lives in the Antarctic. So what has happened here? If you go to Herodotus, one of the earliest Greek travelers, in his book, the Histories, the first history book was the Histories by Herodotus, Greek traveler, in 1425 BC. When he encountered Cometians, Nubians, he said, as well as the climate and the rivers being different from anywhere else in mankind, the people themselves in their practices and their habits are totally different. They do the actual reverse of everybody else in the world. This is his word. So we do things in reverse to everybody else. So as I said, the analogy that I made with the polar bear and in the Antarctic and the bear in the warm climate, it's even though they look the same, their mentality, their psychology, and their survival instincts are totally different.
That's a good point.
What has happened to us through this transition, we have not recognized that we are being taught by somebody who has a different psychology, different mentality, experience a different environment in their ancient history, and have got a different genetic coding to us. When you're in a warm environment, you have time, you have abundance, especially when you've got food around you.
Yes, true.
You have time, you have feelings. Even when the sun comes out, you have feelings from within.
Yeah.
So you generate feelings from you can feel happy, joyous, without any external triggers. When you come from a harsh, cold environment with no vegetation, no heat, and it's a matter of survival. Your feeling of anything good comes from something external. I've got food, I've got heat, I've got shelter, so you need triggers to stimulate emotion. So it's a total different experience, you know, because you come from a cold place. So what makes you happy is external things. Food, hunting, I've killed something, I made love, I've got a drawing, I've got some poetry. So all the triggers are outside. So it's two totally different mentalities that have come together, and we are taking on the mentality of a person who's got total different makeup. So this is what happened. The Greek philosophy was anything goes. Whatever I want to do, I can do. This is what is being instigated in the schools now. They're going back to their natural behavior, is that of anything goes. So now the schools, you don't have to be a man or woman, whatever you want to be, you want to be. This is that mentality, because I suppose if you've got a short timeline, that's why they say human race, because they're always racing around. They just want to get as much in as they can, because their instinct feels that there's nothing around. When you're off abundance now, you know what happened is when they took us and tried to enslave us into their way, we rebelled, because our way was, we saw a creative force, a creative energy. We had an outlook of, we work with nature. And remember, the polar bear who's in the ice and the bear that has the warm environment. We work with nature, we appreciated nature, and we work together, because you can share together, you have enough food. So we had a togetherness about us. So we looked at nature, we was at nature. So they found that they could not get us keep us under control when they tried to impose their way of living with us. You know, so what they did, they made a copy of our way of living. They made a carbon copy to control us. So the Greeks saw what we were doing, and then they made a carbon copy for themselves, and that's how they was able to bring us over. So basically, if you look at how the religions were all constructed, they all really, every book in the so-called Bible is written in passages. Now the original language, read means to go to backwards. Re means to go back. Recall, remember, renew, return. Re means to go back. Ad means to go to. Admire, admit. You know, admit. So read means to look backwards. That's why recall means call back. Return means turn back. So if you look at the word passages in the correct speaking manner, the last sound in passages is sages. Sages are the wise people who passed on the knowledge. So everything is hidden in plain sight. Everything is written in passages. So everything's been taken from the sages that's passed it on to them. So what they did, I think it was Constantinople or one of them, Constantine or whatever, he brought in the religion. They Christianized our wisdom, basically. So basically, they took all the different wisdoms from all the different, and they Christianized it. They put it into one bottle. But what they did, because of the pagans had their own practices and they didn't want to cause no rebellions, they combined everything together. So they took the pagan practice. That's why you got Christmas Day. You got the holly, because that symbolizes springtime. It symbolizes now we're going to start getting food together. So they put the holy days together with the pagan practices. That's why you got Easter, when it's supposed to be when Christ has been resurrected, and then you got bunny rabbits and eggs and Easter eggs. So they've combined to keep everything in order and to keep everybody control. They put the pagan practices with the holy days together, and that's the whole mix up, because at that time he wanted to keep everything together. That's why you got even Christians are calling on Roman gods. Monday is the day of the moon. Tuesday, I'm not sure what Tuesday is again. Wednesday is Woden, which is god of Asgard. You know, Thursday is Thor's day. You know, Friday is Freya. Freya is the wife of Odin. Saturn is Saturn's day, and Sun is Sunday. You see, so it's all one big mix up. And then the next thing is, and then I'll just throw it back into, if you had a car, yeah, and then you found out that the car kept crashing, and then when you went to the mechanic, you found out that someone had changed the parts of the car, and the person who changed the parts of the car, they had to kill him. Would you still want to drive that car? Well, if you look at the Bible, the first person who translated the Bible was I think William Winsdale. The first translation of the Bible was William Winsdale, who translated the Hebrew and the Latin into English. They suffocated him and burned him at the stake. The Pope, they didn't like, so you know, so the first to say, there must be something wrong with that book. If the man who translated the book, they suffocate him and burn him at the stake. You see what I'm saying? So we haven't been trained. That's the next thing. We have not been trained to analyze. This is why they haven't even showed us how to read. We haven't been trained how to analyze. To analyze is a practice called eisegesis. To be able to actually interpret wisdom, you have to practice hermeneutics. You can't just take on what somebody else has said and say you translate the Bible. Eisegesis means stick to the facts. So this is what the book says. This is how they lived in the day. This is what it is. Exegesis means when somebody adds their belief and their interpretation. And this is what's happened in translating the book. Is people are putting in their own beliefs, their own interpretations, their own theology in it, and so we have not been trained, because of course it's been designed to keep us in servitude. The Bible, and I'm going to throw it back. Design is to put us in servitude. Nobody reads the label on the bottle. If you're going to go something in the shop, it's Coca-Cola because I can see the label. If you're going to go medicine, it's anodine, I can see the label. So if you want to get, People buy books because, oh, it's Stephen King, I like Stephen King. But people are picking up this book and they're not reading the label on the bottle, you know. So if you don't read the label on the bottle, you're not going to get the label on the bottle, but everybody misses is the word testament. Testament is the label on the book. Bible comes from the word, so they say biblos, which means book. The label on the bottle is testament. Nobody reads testament. Testament, test is the Latin word for bearing witness, testify. Like when you're in a court of law, you testify. So it's bearing witness, and ment means the mind, or it means will. Will is the word for future. It doesn't mean battle of the wills, because they're trying to stop you from creating your own future. Say it like it's hard work. Will just means future. I will do this. I will go and get that money. So when you use that word will, you're bringing the future into existence. So will means future. When you say testament, it means you're making a will. You're bearing witness to making a will. So no matter what wisdom is in that book, because there is wisdom in the book, it's not about the wisdom. It's about you adopting, leaving your family behind, leaving all your heritage behind, and putting yourself up to adoption for this mystery father, and giving all your goods away. You made a will to give all your goods away to that person.
Well, I think Supreme wanted
Supreme, you can come in, yes.
Supreme, jump in.
Apology.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah. Am I on? Yeah. Apologies. I wanted to ask Jammers a question, but I don't know if you can answer it, and I'm not.
No, well, let jump
Yeah, because
throw it in still. But
well, I'm throw it in.
Yeah, but
I want to know because he mentioned the word, and this is for people who I'll probably say who's on, say, their journey on their first page of learning about Kemetic, and I just want to answer a question from myself that. When I grew up knowing and watching Charlton Heston being Moses. You know, yeah, he's been Moses.
Yeah.
And this is what I want to mention. Yeah. So, in the film, the part I wanted to mention to Jammers and to even to Ashra Kwesi, Moses had to go up in a mountain, didn't he? Right? He had to go up in the mountain and get some tablets. Right? And then when he went to get these tablets, the people got bored and they started to worship. They started to make false idols. Am I correct? Tell me if I'm telling it correctly or not. They started to watch false idols. Moses came back down. Yeah? You will agree with me? And when he saw what was happening, what happened with the tablets?
With the tablets, I'm not too sure what happened to the tablets. You know, what happened to the tablets? He got angry and he threw them down or something.
Yeah. So I wanted to know: is that made up or is that a Kemetic thing? And also, I want you to bring in that I've been taught and listened to speakers such as Ashra Kwesi to say that the 10 Commandments are actually the laws of Ma'at, the 42. Laws of Ma'at, am I correct?
I think 144. Yeah, 144.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was 42. Well, these are questions that I wanted to ask. So, if there wasn't a Moses, so where did these laws of Ma'at come from? And 100? You said 100?
I think from us 140. Well, 144 in it.
And if we are following the laws of, we want Jammers mentioned again about being Kemetic. Are we following these 144 laws? Do you get what the point I'm trying to get? We've got 10 commandments. 10 commandments is thou must not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery. I just about remember 10. Right? What was it? You mustn't sleep with your neighbour's wife, or there's what was it? Bear false witness. Yeah. So I'm just asking, if we have 144, was it laws of Ma'at? Are we practicing, and how do we practice these laws?
Yeah. So what's the point you're trying to? So the point you're trying to. What's the point you're trying to?
It was a question to Jammers, and you said you was gonna try and answer.
No,
it,
but I wasn't trying.
I'm saying I grew up.
Yeah.
And there's people listening to Blessed Radio who are on their journey.
Yeah.
To discovering themselves. So I'm saying, when I watched Charlton Heston, he went up to get the tablets. Yeah, first of all, what is that based on comedically? Him going up. When he came back, the people got bored waiting for him. So they were worshipping. What were they worshipping? What were those idols? That's what I'm saying. Then we have the 10 Commandments. So I want to know, how do we now get 144 laws of Ma'at? Is it? And what are these laws of Ma'at, number one? And did we have the same journey? Did someone go up somewhere and came down with the laws of Ma'at? I'm trying to relate, because they're saying that bits of the Bible have been stolen and been rephrased and redone, and so I'm trying to figure out, because and I'm pretty sure Charlton Heston will be coming up very soon.
Okay, then you're asking a very wide question, right? Okay then, because I'm just trying to work out the purpose of the question still.
Do you want me to come in while
you're... Come in,
please,
Jammaster. Yeah.
Well, firstly, if it's been established, and we'll see what I was going to say, Linton Kwesi Johnson, Ashra Kwesi, I think he's going to be calling in at the moment because he's got a bit of traffic because of the polling day.
Yeah,
has got to say. But if it's a copy, if it's established that the 10 Commandments are copy, then you have to dispute: is it real? Because copy doesn't means it's not real. And imagine if in the year 3000 somebody found a book on Superman, a comic book on Superman, and thought that was real and lived their whole life to this book. So we have to firstly question, before we even talk about Moses, is the book real in the first place? And when you look at the word, I think because Moses is supposed to have written this book, when you look at the language that's used, he's writing it in third person. He's not saying me and I. He's saying Moses did that. So why would Moses talk about Moses like it's not himself? So he's writing it in third person. So we have to question first, is this book real? Then we have to question, is it a story?
But that's what I was going to come to.
Is it an allegory? Is it a fable? Does it have a double meaning? Is it symbolic? Before we take it literally. And most books written in old, like Aesop's Fables, all the old book, Confucius, all of the old books had double meanings. It wasn't a literal story. It was a principle that you're supposed to apply to yourself. And if you look at the first two syllables or the sound in the word Bible, you've got the word bi, as in bicycle, as in bifocal, as in bi-monthly, meaning two. Double, bell, sound, double meaning, bell, sound. So it's a double meaning in the word, and it is a double meaning, because if you look at some of the stories, right, where the man had his son, and some of them, I think one saved the money, the other one spent the money, or whatever. And if you look at Daniel and the lions, then it's principles that you're supposed to apply to yourself, not a literary story. Even if you look at the word Jesus, if you look at Jesus,
this is what I want to come to, because my problem with all this is stories. As we come down to stories, and personally, you need to question where these stories come from. That's my teeny little problem with these things, It's your thing about stories. Where these stories come from.
And I just don't want to cut it before Supreme comes back for. Remember what I said about exegesis and eisegesis. Exegesis is when you take the facts. You also have to apply philology to it. Philology means when you go back into the time of the people and think like they think. You don't think like how you think when you're looking at something thousands of years ago. When you look at the construction of most of the Bibles, most of the version, and version means not original, it means a copy. Some man has come into existence and had a revelation and applied, like, is it Martin Luther? Who started the Protestant, I think the Australian who started the whole of the Protestant, and all the other branches came from there, the Seventh-day Adventists. If you look at all of these factions, some man has had a divine revelation and didn't apply exegesis, they applied eisegesis, which is their own theories into it.
Okay. Come true.
No, I actually wanted to ask him about the laws of Ma'at. How did that come about? The laws of Ma'at.
How did that come about?
Yeah.
But to be honest, I don't know if James can answer that.
Right. The laws of Ma'at come from a principle of nature. Yeah, it's disputed whether it's made in nature. There's dispute, but nature just means the laws of nature. That's all it is. Is looking at nature. Because when you're one with the environment and you want to maintain the environment, you look at the environment to work out. You learn from nature. Because if you look at a lot of people's, but civilizations that live in that environment, they don't have a book or a manual or have to study in a college. They know, they can see the sun, they can see the rain, they know. It's not called weather, it's called I know. Weather means when you're not sure. Are you not sure whether it's going to be sunny or whether it's going to be snowing? That's why you call it weather, because you don't know. So they work with the laws of nature. So when they see a cockerel, they know, oh, it's morning time. So they'll put a picture of the cockerel up to say morning. When they see a snake, they say, oh, that's rebirth. When they see a vulture, they say, oh, that's regeneration. The vulture takes the food just before it oxidizes and it recycles it into life. That's what we do with oxygen. We generate the oxygen. So, and we work in a cycle. So it's principles of nature that you use to apply to yourself.
So was the
I don't flag. You want to come in? No,
so was the laws of Ma'at written on tablets? How was it given to us, and who gave it to us? That's my point.
Yeah, but Bridget, I'm trying to tell it.
The laws was given to us by the hardest science that Westerners can't comprehend is common sense. It's what nature shows you. If you do this, you're gonna get punished. If you jump off the cliff, nature's gonna punish you. You know, if you don't eat, or if you eat the wrong food, you're gonna poison yourself. So this is the lost science of the ancients. Is common sense. What our mothers and fathers used to have. Now we've got intellectual thinking. For example, a plane crash with a whole of esteemed scientists in the jungle. Now they all died out. When they come to look for the bodies, they found that there was food all around them, but the scientists were still stupid. They never had the common sense to know what to eat. Supreme.
Yeah. Everybody hear him now? We were earlier on. We were talking about mental health. Now I'm just bringing this equation in, is that we're having a discussion here, and people have been brought up, and I've been brought up 18 years going to school saying, "Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name," and then all of a sudden somebody comes along and takes that away from me. That's leaving me in a state if I don't get the correct answers. So this is why I'm answering these questions, because we have been going, and when we go to school, I remember going to school, and if I didn't say the Lord's Prayer, I wasn't getting my milk.
Yeah, but Supreme, would you say that we've been conditioned, we've been brainwashed, we've been programmed a certain way, and that's why what James is saying, that we need to question everything, right? For example, when people talk about Jesus is the there's power in the word of Jesus, for example, right?
Yeah.
And Muta broke it down beautifully, right? He said that there was no J in them times there.
Yeah.
So, for example, if my name is John and you call me Peter, I'm not going to answer them. I'm not going to answer my name. So when people say the power in the name of Jesus, there was no J in them time there. So you see the contradiction there already, right?
Yeah.
So what we need to do here, we just need to reprogram ourselves. A lot of things we've taken on, we need to dash away one side.
Okay.
And start to question, right? And start going back. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
So you're trying to look for answers. Right?
Yeah, but you said we should question.
Yeah, we should.
And I'm questioning.
Question. Right, but I mean, we have a scholar be coming in soon, and
oh,
he'd be the right person to really.
You said, what did you say about the J and the Y? What did you just say?
There's no J. There's no J in the language in Arabic.
So
In Aramaic Hebrew.
Yeah.
In the tongue of the time, there was no J. So by you using the J, you've already been trained to break the first commandment. Thou shalt have no other gods but me, or worship no. You've already broken two of the commandments by using the J.
Okay. So how did J come about?
J came about after. It's not. Remember, the original language, the original tongue was Aramaic Hebrew.
Yeah.
The J came about when certain Englishmen tried to translate the language, and even further than that, when scientific racism was brought in the University of Göttingen, because the Germans were trying to create a false ideology that they were superior to every other race on the earth. So they created in the University of Göttingen, they invented scientific racism because they haven't really got any concrete proof to prove that they're superior, so they basically had to make it up. Because they didn't have no scientific evidence, no cultural evidence, no spiritual evidence that they were superior. What they had to do, they used colours. So they invented the word Caucasian, they invented the word black, they invented the word Mongolian, and there was five. So they separate. They made superior based on colours. Then they sent out archaeologists to find bones to prove that black people came from apes and white people came from the Greeks. Then they went into religion. And then also, there was no such word as the word anti-Semitic. They put these words into the religion to prove that they were superior. So it's corrupted. The word, when you get the word, even the word God is not. It comes from Göttingen. It's another German word. The Germans went into the books and reconfigured them for themselves. I think we got Duggie and.
Okay then. So, Supreme has asked some question, and Jams is literally just trying his best to answer the question. And I'm really looking to turn everything upside down.
I just got an important message. Ashra Kwesi's, I think he heard Supreme's comment and him vexed. So him saying, him telling the driver to put him foot down on the steering wheel, him coming down to cause some kind of contamination when he brakes.
Okay, dead. So what we should do is I think echo inside here, So we're gonna play a clip to Kwesi, and then we are going some reasoning.
Even if we come down to the New American version of the Bible, in fact, England and America almost went to war because America wrote its version of the Bible. And England wanted their Bible to be the last Bible to be written. But again, America...
Yeah, so basically, would you say that we was better off? Because Supreme, you made a comment that now that you've sort of seen things differently...
There's an echo. There's
an echo. You have an echo. Hello? Check. Yes, Supreme, you made a statement that now that you've been asked to question the religion, you feel that you're in a worse off situation than when you was in a religious state. So when you was in a state of believing, now you're feeling that you've been left with nothing to hold on to. But if you look at the evidence of this religion that we've been in, how have we really benefited? Where are the schools? Where are the where is the hospitals? All the money that we've been putting into religion, we still seem to be at the bottom of society. So how has this religion benefited us?
But before Supreme jump in there, right? Don't forget, Supreme was on this thing about beliefs, right? Now then, beliefs are like legs of a table, right? When you start shaking the legs, everything start crumbling down. In the middle of the word belief is a word called what? Lie. So there's a clue there, right? So when you on this belief, it's like a foundation. Once it's taken away from you, See,
belief also it breaks down.
But no, you see the point I'm trying to make, though.
Yeah, I'm just expanding on the point.
But yeah, all right.
The B, if you belief breaks down to two again Latin words. Be means to be in the current state. This is where we be. So be is the current state. Leaf is the Latin word to be off leave. So be to be off leave of your senses. It also relates to love. To make somebody believe something, boy, they can't wicked, you know. You have to make them fall in love. The belief disappears when your facts, evidence come into the equation. When eisegesis comes in, belief breaks down. You know, belief in Greek, in the Bible, John Strong coordinates is number 539. If you look at the word belief in Greek, it means to cheat or deceive.
Okay, then. I didn't know
belief in Greek means to cheat or deceive because it's not based on facts.
All right, I didn't know that's very powerful.
The word omen, what we've been trained to be frightened of, like Damien the omen, in Greek means the truth. Occult means to hide. So basically everything remember, it's two testaments. It's the battle of the wills. You've got the Old Testament, which is the old way of making a will, when you had a direct you made a sacrifice, or you had direct relationship with your creator, an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. The new will is against the old will. So everything that was good in the old will is now being made bad by the new will. No, it's all right. He sent his son to us now, so everything that you've done, you don't have to do it no more. Just bring yourself over to adoption to me. So when you look at the Greek alphabet and the Hebrew alphabet, you'll see that what was positive in the Hebrew alphabet has now been made negative in the Greek alphabet. And when you look at the Latin symbols, you'll see the symbols reverse. Latin is when the code started coming in. So Latin is a code, because that's why when we've been trained to read, which is misleading again, and when we've been given education, which is one letter short of medication, you're not sick but you're going to nursery, you're only going to nursery to get a doctor in. So when we've been misled, we're not shown the code. So basically we've been shown to look at the words back to front. We've been given letters, so we let things happen to us. The opposite of the word let is to tell. So we've been given these letters. We're not shown the Latin sounds in the code. It's called a code of law. So that's why we need somebody else to talk in that code. When anytime we're in crime, we find the words that we've been using, they're no longer applicable. When we go into science, they're no longer applicable. So basically, there's a battle of the wills going on with the Old Testament and the New Testament, and really what the Bible has been is really a book of slavery. It's a book of what they used to do to exchange property, because remember, we were banned from reading. We were killed if we could read. The first book that they gave us to read, the man who tormented us, raped us, killed and pillaged us and shipped us over, gave us a book to worship when we worshipped in the first place, and that's what got us in the trouble we're in today.
Can I just mention the studio number? 07 9444 31366 to those who are currently listening and want to ask a question. Now, I'm asking questions from my perspective and my observation to Jammers and Duggie, and
there's other people inside there still, you know. So
oh, I just want to touch on the belief. I ain't finished with the belief yet. Yeah. If you look at the word belief backward in the original sound, or listen to the sound, it's be the lie of Eve. The lie of Eve ill, is that Eve was responsible for all the contamination and destruction on the planet, because the man's not taking no responsibility. He's blaming it on the woman. He said when Eve gave him the apple, that's when everything became ill. So the word evil is tarnishing the woman straight away. So this is a religion, and if you look at they kill the most women in this religion. You know, they blaming the woman for all the traversal. That's why they dominate the woman and put the woman away, so she in a nunnery. So they want nothing to do with her. They put her in a nunnery. You know, and so this belief system is talking about the lie of ill. When funny enough, Eve means before. Christmas Eve is before Christmas. New Year's Eve is before. New Year's Adam and Eve is Adam and before. If you go to the Vulgate Bible, which has the original Hebrew, the old Latin text and the English text, in the Latin text you'll see Adam is Adam, and when you go to the English text you see Adam is Adam in English. When you go to the Latin text you'll see Eve is not Eve in Latin. Eve is Havam. Havam backwards is Mava. You see, so basically, as I said, this book has been the biggest contamination that's ever happened to us as a people. Before this book came along, our history was full of gold. We were living with gold. After the book came along, they've got all the money and all the wealth, and we've still got the book.
Okay, so Supreme, you want to jump in? Because
Yeah, I just want to say greetings to one and all who's locked to this frequency on asblessradio.com. My name is Supreme, the original Supreme, the Spin Doctor. I'm putting a spin on the questions and posing them from my observation, like I said, and perspective. Growing up in the UK, growing up and seeing our parents come from the Caribbean to come to the UK, and one of the things that actually happened when they came to the UK was that one of the places, what we could say as not refuge or place of meeting up, was the church. You know, that's how people got together. People met at church. That's how people socialize. So I'm looking to say to yourself, Jammers, and all in the studio, what is the Kemetic way of us engaging and socializing? Now that you've told me, you know, the Y, the J, there's no 10 commandments, you've taken away my belief. You've got to now install back.
Okay.
You know, as I said, I went to school. I went to school for 20 years.
So what do you think? What do you think we should be doing then? Yeah, Kieran. Yeah. Okay. Jammers, play something to bring in the brother.
We'd just like to welcome our guests, our esteemed guests. If you just bear with us in the studio for the next 5 minutes, get your seats and get ready for action.
Yes, so we're just juggling around the place a little bit here. And we do have, is this Ashra Kwesi inside the house? Yes, sir. How you keep it? So who'll be joining us very, yeah. And we have Jeff there. I'm Jeff there, yeah, right now. Long time, you know. So, trust me, you know, when Ashra Kwesi features with us, life will never be the same again, because we have to spin that was ask some question. So it's opportunity for him to ask Ashra Kwesi some question very shortly. So we just line up yourself properly. And huh? You come, yeah, come in.
Yeah, you've saved me, Ashra Kwesi, because we've been having a heated debate here about spirituality and Christianity and the origins and what, you know, the Bible. You know, so you've come just at the right time, because I've just been breaking into a sweat right now. So I'm glad you've come to help us on this debate.
Okay. All right. So I'm ready, right in the middle of the war zone, huh?
Yeah.
Okay then. So, Ashra Kwesi, first, I want to give thanks for you to parting through Bless Radio. You know, we've been hearing so much about you. You know, you're working tirelessly. You know, but it'd be wise just to give a little background about yourself, you know, and the whole thing about consciousness and the kind of work you do. Because no one take it for granted that everybody know about you, but just a little background about yourself.
Yes,
Yeah.
Well, again, it's an honor to be here in UK in the African community here, and on Bless Radio. And again, my journey started about going on 4 decades now.
Okay.
Back in 1973. At Long Beach State in Southern California. I met Dr. Yosef Ben Yakinen, that we affectionately know as Dr. Ben.
Okay, so you work with Dr. Ben?
Excuse me?
You've worked with Dr. Ben,
I
yeah?
worked with Dr. Ben for 14 years.
Okay, then.
But at that time when I met him in 1973, I was a student at Long Beach State.
Okay.
And at that time, I was fighting the Gestapo LAPD.
Mm-hmm.
And Dr. Ben, that's the first time I heard our African spirituality and black divinity connected to our history.
Right.
And I asked Dr. Ben after the lecture, can you prove what you said here today?
Okay.
I stopped him in the middle of the aisle.
How old was you then? How old was you then time then?
I was 21.
Oh, it's you, man. Yeah, so
right, very young.
Yeah, very young.
He said, well, not only can I prove it, I can take you back to Africa and show you.
Okay.
And, he said, above all, we need young people like you to go back and do the field research, and he walked away.
Mm-hmm.
So that started my dream to return back to Africa, and I made that journey in 1981 with him, and I have not missed a year in 38 years.
Oh, you became every single year?
I haven't missed a year in 38 years since that first trip. In 14 years, I started doing apprenticeship under him in 1981.
All right.
And I started working with him. He saw my love for the temples, the monuments. So I actually lectured in the field when he lectured at the hotel. So that was my relationship with Dr. Ben. So that started me on my journey. So there, as I refer to as the books in stone, we can verify many of the ideas that we see in Western religions, whether that be Judaism, Christianity, Islam, or many of these ideas were taken from temples that predate the Western world and these religions by thousands of years.
Okay then. So obviously you're a lecturer, so you lecture all over the world or all
Yes,
over
sir.
Africa, yeah?
Yes, sir.
So in what particular field are you lecturing? What's your subject?
Well, again, you're attracted to people who awaken your spirit. So, of course, as I mentioned, Dr. Ben, he lectured on African history, spirituality, religion, and that was the course that I took. And lecturing on African origin of Christianity, African origin of the Bible, African origin of civilization, the African origin of Western, the African spiritual mystery system, and as well as the ancient Kushites, Ethiopia. Okay, because I also take trips to Ethiopia every year. Which Kush, as we know, ancient Ethiopia is the mother of Egypt.
Right.
So this information, I come with visual documentation. That's what I started with. As Dr. Ben told me to go back and do the field research. So I come with the visual documentation to have, as I refer to as a comparative analysis. So brothers and sisters can see it. Right. There it is. It's on the temples. And then we can see ideas were literally taken directly from the ancient African temples.
Okay, then. It's quite interesting because before you come, we had a quite of a warm discussion earlier on talking about the Bible and Christianity and religion, etc. And one of the things we were saying that, most people are in this, locked in the Bible and Christianity, and it's like when you start presenting certain truth to them and certain reality, that the Bible's, being misrepresented, they get kind of upset with you because they're locking this kind of belief and so forth.
That's their belief system.
Yeah, it's all about the belief system, right? But the question is now, right? And one of the questions the brother was asking earlier on, right? What books are we have in place in terms of the Bible and etc.? Where do we go in terms of getting to the root of the facts information? Yeah.
Well, that's one of the lectures I have and that I will be doing in Birmingham is the African origin of the Bible and the Quran. Now, first of all, I think an intelligent question to ask in relationship to the Bible is that where were the first Bibles written at? And what are the first Bibles? It's like anything. You start with a chronology of time. So where are the first Bible? Where is Europe's first Bible at? Europe's first Bible was written in Alexandria, Egypt. So an intelligent question to ask, why? Why was the Septuagint version of the Bible, which was around 250 BC, why was it written in Egypt? Why was the Torah written in Egypt? There when Alexander, that we have been taught to call the Great, when he came, nothing great about him, when he came into Egypt and usurped the throne, he got Aristotle, to plunder the temples that I refer to as the books in stone. There they had the papyruses. This is where the name paper gets its name, by the way. So this papyrus was long before paper and Bibles. There they collected all this material, and after Alexander's death, they built the Alexandria Library. Now, we know about the Alexandria Library. Everybody knows about the Alexandria Library. Yeah. But do we know about the Temple of Heru? Okay. Do we know about the Temple of Ipit-Asut? Do we know about the Temple of Het-Heru? See, these are the temples where they stole these papyruses and housed in the Alexandria Library.
Alexander Library.
Yes, sir. That's in Alexandria, Egypt.
So I'm just gonna just stop you there, Jeff. Could you just what the event that was taking place? Can you just give it out the details for tomorrow?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Jeff, this.
Yeah. Well, it's the opportunity to see the great Ashra Kwesi, Baba Ashra Kwesi, at the iconic. The iconic Mama Art Center tomorrow. Lecture's taking place at 366A High Road, Tottenham. That's N17 9HT. And doors will open at 6 p.m. and proceeding will start at 7. So it's a one in a lifetime event. Please do not miss it. You'll regret it.
Right. So Ashra Kwesi, I just want to take you back a bit. Who is Ashra Kwesi for the newcomers, especially the youngsters? What got you into studying history at that level?
Well, again, like all of us, we want to know who we are as a people through the ma'afa or the kidnapping of our.
What made you question in the way you did as a child?
Well, I knew things were wrong. I knew in the church. I asked the minister.
What age did you start to question?
At 9 years old, I asked the minister, "Why don't we have any black angels up on the stained glass window?" And he said, "The devil must be in you to ask that question."
Really? Yeah.
Now, keep in mind at that
So
time.
where was you based? What area?
At that time, I was based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Okay, fine. Yeah.
So I grew up in that area.
Yeah.
So again, keep in mind what was going on at that time period. You see, again, it was a black consciousness going on. So again, we're talking about a cultural movement that was taking place
At that time,
At that time, the civil rights movement. Okay,
Right.
so all these things, I'm looking at on television. So it's evoking my consciousness to ask these questions.
What time period was that?
We're talking about in the 60s.
60s. Okay.
Yeah, we're
Right.
talking about in the 60s, so early 60s. So this is what evoked my consciousness.
Right.
To start to ask these critical questions about us as an African people. So again, going back to the church, I guess that was my earliest recollection in terms of asking the minister, why aren't we in the angelical realm? Why aren't we up? I mean, this is the heavenly world that we see all these European angels up here, European image of a God up here, and so because I questioned it, he said the devil must be in me. So, but I'm glad that happened.
So when he said that to you, what did that make you do?
I knew something was wrong as a child. I knew something was wrong, and it started to evoke my consciousness to ask, that I want to know what this is all about.
Right.
So of course, traveling through the course of life's time and everything, and zoom up to 1973. That's when I met Dr. Ben.
Oh, right.
Right.
Was it by chance, or how did you meet him?
Well, that was at Long Beach State, as I mentioned a minute ago.
Right.
Long Beach State, and I met him, and that day, he gave a very powerful lecture on our African divinity, spirituality, and history.
Right.
So again, I never heard that information before, so I asked Dr. Ben. When he was done with the lecture, he's walking down the aisle, I stopped him. I said, "Dr. Ben, can you prove what you said here today?" He said, "Young man, I can take you back and show you."
Right.
So that was very powerful, the fact that he said, "I can show you, I can take you back to Africa." He said, "But above all, we need young people like you to go back and do the field research," and he walked away. That was my dream from that day, to return back to Africa.
Just want to stop you there, because there's a lot of cut and paste historians now. So what is field work mean? What does that mean?
Field work means that you're there, you're on location, you're at the spot. You're not, as Dr. Ben referred to, as an armchair scholar. I'm not sitting around. Yes, books are important to read, but we have to go back to these places where many of these ideas were plagiarized. Okay, they were copied from the temples and tombs in these ancient places. After all, everybody else has benefited from going back to Africa to copy these many ideas. Specifically, we're talking about an ancient Kemet that is referred to as Egypt today, by the Greek name.
So I just say, what does it do to the mind when you actually see it rather than read it? What happens to your mind when you actually see these things?
It opens up a genetic memory bank.
Oh.
A genetic memory bank.
Genetic. Can you go back? What is a genetic memory bank?
Genetic memory bank is everything that our ancestors have done for thousands of years is still genetically in our code.
Right.
But it's through the shutdown and the denial, through the process of slavery, that shut that genetic memory bank down.
Right.
But we don't want to hear that. See, because keep in mind, they ripped our culture out of us, some of us. Okay, during the whole process of the Ma'afa, the slave plantation. All right, so we were not allowed to deal with our culture, our spirituality, or any form of worship that we had to our African deity, or meaning God.
Right.
So again, we had not only that, we feared, okay, African culture. Keep in mind, we were not even allowed to speak any African language.
Right.
All right. So again, that's why I said, but it's, and the genetic code is still there. But once you open up that ancestral genetic code, that genius within, that's locked in that genetic memory bank, that's what happened to me.
Right.
It was already there. Okay. It took the evoking of a spirit like a Dr. Ben and a Dr. John Henry Clark. Peace be upon these great ancestors, okay, warrior scholars, all right, uncompromising spirit. And again, returning back to Africa and reading, going through the books in stone. I say the books in stone because you're in the book. These are massive monuments and ancient reliefs and ideas. And, you know, when people, when I'm over there with the group and I do a comparative analysis with pictorial pictures of the Bible, and even Europeans who happen to be walking by, they're shocked. Whoa, look at that. You see, because the other groups are not doing this. You see, because again, the European system of which I now refer to it as white supremacy Christianity. Right. They have made people believe in these things that they are real when they are plagiarized from the ancient temples of Africa.
Right, let's stop because we've got a team of questioners coming on. I really like to thank you for that. You really sparked me up, so
evoke a whole lot of spirit. Okay, so we got a chain reaction going on.
Next Supreme coming up next.
All right, greetings, brother Kwesi. All right, first of all, I'd like to say thank you, and thanks to the ancestors for what you have done and your contribution for us moving forward. Reason why, because I was one of the youngsters that when you first came on the scene, I was like memorized. I couldn't understand Dr. Ben because he was a bit too deep. But then you came on not so deep, and you had your wife there, you both came on like fire, yeah? A lot of people don't remember those times, but I did want to just add every video. So the point is, you started to explain to us, you was taking people back and giving them tours and showing them about the way some of our women dance and where they get the dance from and those cultures that is in Africa. So I'd like to explain a little bit about the women and the culture that you was introducing us to, because we always talk about history, but our women, we come from our women, so it's good that they got some of this information from you.
Well, my mentor Hemp, or that's the Kemetic word for divine wife, she deals a lot with the African women and the culture and dress. In fact, she has a video on the cultural destruction of African fashion, which is very powerful. It really it blew me away when she put that together.
Yeah, I got the
But
video.
in terms of the African women and the African goddess, okay, she has the African goddess, the spiritual foundation of ancient Kemet. So it was the goddess is the foundation of ancient African spirituality. From their empirical observation, what I mean by their empirical observation is what they could see. So if they're looking at the universe, they're looking at a macro womb is giving birth to the S-U-N sun, like the micro womb giving birth to the S-O-N sun. So this was the spiritual consciousness that our ancestors related to that feminine principle, because they could not conceive of a god without a goddess, or a goddess without a god. That's called the spiritual dialectical laws of opposites, based off of the spiritual principles as they refer to as ma'at. Again, so when I ask many ministers to this day, in the scriptures, when it says, let us make man in our own image, I've been questioning this us for a long time. Who is this us?
Who is this us?
That's Mrs. God. Was it a marital dispute?
Well, that's another thing that's what we're getting to now. So, like how you're getting there, you actually brought a lot of people on tour, and you brought them into these caves, into these pyramids and temples,
Yes, sir.
And you actually broke down, because I'm going to finish off where Supreme was talking about earlier on. You actually broke down the 10 Commandments and where they came from.
Yes, sir.
The question that Supreme was asking, which I'm going to ask, is where did they get those commandments? The 40, you got 42 confessions and declarations of my art and all this. So where did the Egyptians get them from, so that the Greeks and everybody can come and plagiarize it? Where did we get it from?
Keep in mind, this took thousands of years to them develop this whole spiritual consciousness of Ma'at, based off of that I have not robbed, I have not stolen. So that was the moral foundation and basis of that came up out of their ancestral genetic memory bank. These Kari-Habs are priests. And these priests go back thousands of years. So again, they study these moral principles of life itself. And it's the foundation of these moral principles that later became the 10 Commandments. So originally, there were 147 of the laws of Ma'at, broken down to 42. And then, of course, when the Hebrew religion came along, then again, this is where they were able to get these ideas. Now, can we show people this in the temples? Yes. In the Valley of the Kings. Right there we can see these laws that are, they're massive, to go into the spiritual realm that we refer to as heaven today. You had to go through these laws. I have not robbed, I have not stolen, I have not killed. That's your moral balance, okay, to go into the spiritual realm. But again, when we look at the tabernacle stones that we're most familiar with, we always get sketches of Moses and the tabernacle stones. But you can see these, what looks like the tabernacle stones, which is the feather of Ma'at. Represented that moral code and that moral judgment. So this becomes the foundation. So keep in mind that the whole spiritual principles of Kemet go back thousands of years before the Western religions. Now, one thing that we have lost, meaning us as an African people, we have lost chronology of time. So, of course, our time period has been circumscribed within a Western time. And within that Western time, we think within their diameter. And everything that, keep in mind, we had to go to their universities to go and to become a minister. You have to go to a European seminary school. So again, they're not teaching the origins of these things. All right, they're not doing a comparative analysis with religions that predate the Western world. We're only getting it from the time period that they started. So of course, when we start to talk about these things, that's all we know. All right, we start time with Adam and Eve. Then we believe that this is the beginning.
You were saying now they gave Adam a perm weave.
Right.
Perm.
Yeah. Well, Newsweek put out, back in 1988, Newsweek put a magazine out with had a black Adam and Eve on there, and had Adam with a Jerry curl, and Eve had a weave.
Yeah. That was a popular.
And a brother showed me, see, Adam and Eve were black, but see, because they're black, that doesn't mean that's the beginning of the story.
Okay.
You see, we have to go back. Where's the earliest idea of man and woman created? Okay. Now, again, Kemet had mythologies and these types of things as well. So their creation story, it was a Sar and a Set. But the difference is they were created simultaneously. There was not a rib taken from a Sar to make a Set. There was not a good and evil story that a Set ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and that's the reason for the world's sins, because she ate from that tree, and her cycle was reminded her.
So according to Kemet, but according to Kemet then, and what you've learned, what is the tree of good and evil?
Well, they call it the tree of Ma'at. I revealed that on the temple. You have the large tree. You have also the goddess Sheshat.
For the listeners want to know.
Yes, the goddess Sheshat. She's giving the fruit of divine knowledge.
Yeah.
The patriarchs who came from the north, they did not have a spiritual principle around the goddess. So again, that was wiped out in the Western religion. The goddess was wiped out, but she was picked up in Catholicism. And where is she picked up in Catholicism? When the Roman Byzantines come on, she's worshipped as the Madonna and Child. That's why you have Mary and Jesus is sitting on the lap of Mary. That's a copy of a Sar, a Set in Haru, with a Set with her holy child, Haru, on her lap. That was literally plagiarized. So the Black Madonna in Notre Dame, and hopefully that picture wasn't burned of the Black Madonna when it burned down. But that, prior to Western Christianity, that was a Set in Haru. When the Romans took the religion up out of Kemet, spirituality, and spread it throughout their Western world, Gaul, which is France, and Britannia, that is now Britain, Germany, Germania, which is now Germany, that's why you have this Black Madonna everywhere. Because that was a Set who they were worshiping, known as the Herculaneum worship of the goddess Aset. But when Byzantine Romans took over, this is where the slow conversion of Christianity came in. She still remained black, but she was called Mary, which is, by the way, the Kemetic word is called Murray, that means love. So literally, even the name Mary was taken from Murray, that means love. My wife is called Murray Ra. Okay, that means love by Ra.
So Mary means love?
Yes, it means love by Ra. See? So again, this is why it's always the Western church in the Western world has always had a fear of African people studying ancient Egypt. Because there we can see where these things were copied and made up. The Western church, even not only African people, but the world. There's always been a fear because they shut down the temples. Who shut down these temples? Theodosius in the 4th century AD and also Justinian in 6th century AD. They shut these temples down because they were copying these ideas. But they carved on the temple. You can see a Set carved on the temple where they try to chisel her out, the Madonna and Child. All right. So anyone coming to see that and say, why is this Madonna and Child identical to Western Catholicism, Mary and Jesus?
Okay.
All right. But they refer to as a Set in Haru as pagan and heathen. Well, how can it be so pagan and heathen? This one is first. This is the prototype.
Okay.
If you're in a classroom, you wrote the paper. Is that correct? Yeah. But if I come and copy the paper, which one is correct? Yours or mine? But I stand up and try to talk about the paper. I can't get everything right. You see, I got to keep referring back to the original paper.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask one more question before I bring in Empress over there. All right. I followed the trail throughout the years, seeing the work that you and your wife and everybody's put in. What is it now what would you like to see before you transcend that? Of all this, what you're doing, what is it that you'd like to see for our people? What is that will fulfill you?
Well, I would like to go back to the ancient language of our ancestors, long before Arabic, long before Aramaic, long before Hebrew. And I would like to say the Kemetic term as Teta, Kemet, Neta, Anxanejet. Now, what did I just say? What would I like to see? Is Teta, Kemet, Neta, Anxanejet. That means what? Everlasting, black, divine life, health, and stability for us as an African people.
Yeah. That's it. Now I've got the end of the story. Yeah.
You can't get better than that.
Nah, because when you got all the videos and everything, you need to know where is it leading to.
Right.
And now
it's our black divinity.
Yeah.
All right. As I said, I think I was on the radio show before I got here, and I used the story of my mother, peace be upon her.
Yeah.
I grew up in a house with a white Jesus on the wall, white figurines, white angels. My mother, when I started lecturing, came back to Pittsburgh, she came to my lectures.
Your mother,
She came to the lecture. Keep in mind, my grandfather's a Baptist Christian, all right? So this is her father. She grew up a Christian, powerful. But after the lecture, she didn't say nothing. I didn't badger her. I didn't ask any questions. So I know because there was some things going on in her. She was processing these things, but she always came to the lecture. One day I returned home. I was shocked. I broke down and cried. Because she took the white Jesus down and put a black Jesus up. She got rid of all the white figurines that I had to grow up with, and got black angels. She literally turned her house into a museum. Every time she saw something black, she was trying to make up for it. So what is she intact with? She's intact with her black divinity. Our black divinity is our black spirituality. It's our African spirituality. But we've been taught to demonize it and vilify it. If I use the common thing that we were brought up with, angel's food cake versus a devil's food cake. So we were taught to hate blackness. So she was intact with her spirituality and her black divinity.
That's a good
so I'm happy with that. I'm not going to try to talk to her about a Sarset and Haru. But the young people, whose brain is like a sponge, all right, is young, we have to deal with it on that level, all right? But again, when we deal with Christianity, its foundation is coming up out of that, all right? And if we're dealing with the Christ, we've got to deal with a Gnostic Christ, okay? And it means the Yeshua, the spiritual idea of this that was taught that the Romans feared because they understood, the Gnostics taught that we all are the Christ. Yet Christ had nothing to do with a man. It's a spirituality. You must rise up. In ancient Kemet, it was called the Ka. Generally, the symbol is 2 arms up. It's a Ka. The Gnostics called it the Caress. The Romans called it Christ. They said, "Oh, people need a Christ." They just slapped the European Jesus in front of us. This is what you worship. This picture right here. So the people denied their whole spirituality and their whole caress spirit within themselves, their own Christ.
Oh, Christ made the spirit within yourself?
Within yourself, because they feared you rise up and fight against tyranny and oppression. Because that's what the Gnostics did. They fought against tyranny, and the Romans feared that. They said, we'll just place this image up in front of them. They don't have to go within themselves to rise up their Ka, to rise up their spirit. This is what it was all about.
Right.
That's one of the reliefs that I show when I'm in Kemet with our groups. How many of you are familiar with the dancing Ka, the dancing Jesus, called the dancing Christ? The Leonardo da Vinci and Raphael made a picture. He's got one arm down and 2 arms up and one leg up, one leg down.
Okay, that's that card.
Yeah, it's called the dancing Christ. I show right on the relief in Kemet. Here's the dancing Haru, carved on the temples. He's free because he's not in the bandages. The mummification of the body. Why is the European image of the Jesus wrapped up in a mummy? If he's going to go up to heaven, just go ahead and go. Why you got to wrap him up? Because they were copying that idea of the mummification process of Kemet for the metamorphosis, for the spirit to go up. So the physical body is the dancing Ka. He's in the spiritual realm, but the Romans didn't understand it. They took it literally, that the physical body would rise up, but it's the spiritual body that rose up, but the Ka, or the physical body, stayed on earth, but the spiritual body rose. So that's what they meant by the dancing Ka. Later, the Gnostics called the dancing Caress, The Romans took it and called it dancing Christ and put an image in front of us and said, this is it.
But now we know the truth.
Right.
Side question.
Sister want to come in.
All right, now we got to balance it out and let the sisters in it.
Look, I was going to get up, and he said, don't get up. So I said,
They said, oh, they're talking about the God and the goddess, and they left the sisters out.
Blessed love to you.
Yes, my sister, how are you?
Got you.
Blessed love to you. Baba, my name is Flower.
Beautiful
And
name.
part of me wanted to just sit here in silence and just listen because I'm just so appreciative of everything you're saying. But this is I'm the only female right now in this room. On behalf of our sisters,
Holding down a lot of power right now, sister.
on behalf of our sisters, on behalf of our ancestors and our women line, I know that personally I couldn't sit here and not say anything and just listen. Because in our homes, the ones who's in our homes, who's leading and taking care of our boy child are our women. I'm glad what you said about mummy. And knowing you said that you could see that when you went back to the house that mum had changed and so forth. How can we need now to simplify all that has been said? It's been years that you have been coming here. And our women, we hear this. But because, again, we are accustomed to, when it comes on to spirituality, we have to go through a male figure. So within our homes where there's no men, because society have separated and how we are running, how things has become like the norm for just one parent and a female in the house, there's no one there to touch on spirituality because we somehow also feel that we need to have a male figure present. I'd like for you to bear this in mind and to break down how can our sisters who are listening, our queens, our empresses, our princesses who are listening right now, what can we begin to start doing within our home without the male figure? Because this is so important. And we're talking about, there's a feminine energy. There's you know, and I know, that there's something that is dynamic which is taking place right now. It is no coincidence that most of our leaders or whatever are women. We have a prime minister in
Ethiopia.
Exactly. We have our women taking forth there. Even in the UK, we still have a prime minister female. There's a female energy around. Break it down for us, Baba.
Well, again,
Explain
we're talking about, and in fact, let me say I'm lopsided right now too because I generally, my netter hemp, that's the Kemetic word for divine wife, and I netter heads divine husband. In fact, Mary Ra, she's the one that researched those terms. We generally come here together for those of you who had previous lectures, but of course this is our busy time of the year, preparation for the tour to Egypt that we have coming up in July. We have over 200 and some people, so one of us got to be home. We don't want people to panic, but she deals a lot with the African goddesses and spirituality with that, which is very powerful. But in relationship to your question, keep in mind we have to look at the fact that the foundation of African spirituality is based off of the whole idea of the goddess. This is what we had to see. We suffer, we brothers suffer because we come out of a system that in essence demonized the feminine principle in the religious stories of Eve eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil that I mentioned earlier, and that's the reason for the world's 10 sins. That comes out of the Greek culture, the Pandora box of the evils of the world. So the Western world hated the feminine principle, the goddess idea. So that's been incorporated into some of our consciousness in terms of relationship to her, instead of seeing that spiritual dialectical laws of opposites. Keep in mind in ancient Kemet, the whole spiritual balance was of Ma'at. And who is Ma'at? An African goddess. Who's the African goddess? We're talking about a cosmic goddess of morality, truth, justice, and righteousness that we talked about earlier. So now where's this coming from? This is coming up out of the consciousness of ancient African spirituality. They're developing this. So they're seeing it. So what caused them to deal with the goddess on such a level? From their own empirical observation of Mut Netchet. What is Mut Netchet? Mother Nature. Mother Nature is everything. It's the feminine principles that we see around us. The birth of nature coming through right now in the spring solstice. That's feminine. It's birth. Everything that we see with birth. We look at even the animal kingdom. And those of you who, I love looking at the nature pictures. Everything that you see of that female principle is going to protect that baby. I don't care what form of life it is, from the animal life to the insect life. It's going to protect that baby, no matter what.
What's that again? The feminine principle.
The feminine principle, right?
In the animal kingdom.
In the animal kingdom is going to protect that baby. So this is what they observed. This is what this was their keen. This was their keen observation. That everything that we see in life, that power is going to make sure that goddess is going to protect that baby. So they developed a spiritual principle of that empirical observation of what they see around us, the natural forces, not dogma, not something that somebody's right. Because see, now keep in mind, why is the Western world, why do they have such a hatred towards her? Because they're coming out of the ice climate. The ice climate versus the sun climate, all right? She was a burden in many cases because of the ice age and so forth. All right, so they developed more of a negativity, and I give respect to a European who wrote the book, The Iceman Inheritance, Michael Bradley.
So could you just expand on...
It's a white guy, isn't it? Who wrote that book then?
White, Michael Bradley, who wrote, because, now one thing about with Michael Bradley, and I got your question, when he has an objective view of his own culture that most Europeans don't like to have. They like to have an objective view of everybody else. But they don't, you notice they don't never want to bring it back on how they have developed their level of consciousness in relationship to history or religion or ideas. Michael Bradley did that. They hated him for it. And he said, our culture comes out of an ice culture. And the ice culture did not recognize the feminine principle. They had a hatred towards her. Okay? And that's what developed that out of that caveman mentality. Whereas in Africa, it was natural. They saw that she was life itself. You see, she was the one that, even to this day, women are one that's taking care of the home, the
Papa,
food.
I will share this with you. Until I started going to Africa and doing documentaries, and especially visiting the enslavement sections and talking on it and seeing the fat houses in Nigeria, that's when I became totally emancipated, although I was brought up in a home wherein I knew that I was a princess. I knew that I was a goddess. But still, I needed to go and touch soil and to be a part of it. Our sisters who cannot go there, right? Who are hearing this for the first time, realizing the power and the goddesses and realizing who they are. Because really, we're talking about
sometimes we don't like to even hear the term goddess because that has even been demonized as something, negative.
Exactly. How can we break it down in a short time? How can we get our sisters to start empowering themselves so we can then transfer back onto our male child, back onto our children?
Well, I think the number one symbol that our ancestors brought forth, the most powerful symbol of all the symbols of the Medu Neter and the glyphs that's on those temples, the one that came out of their spiritual consciousness was the Neter Ankh, the divine life, the symbol of the Ankh itself, which is the symbol of her womb. Okay. You see, there is where the first baptism took place at. They took that from her. The baby's in the womb of the water. She breaks her water. That's where the first baptism took place at.
Right.
See? But the preacher says you got to baptize you in the water because you were born in sin. Because of this misogyny that was created, because Adam and Eve had sex, that's the reason for the world's sins. And now she's demonized and vilified because of Eve. And this is the sick mentality. So she relates to, again, that's what the patriarchs wanted to do, to relate to the male, you see. And then she belittles her own self because of the evil of the sin. Okay, so she is told that you must baptize that child because she's born in sin. This is some sick misogynistic stuff. See, we have to think about it, not get caught in fear of damnation and purgatory, that you're going to burn in hell to even have the thoughts like this. You see, that's how they created fear. Because before, they burned you at the stake back during the Inquisition period. Now they do it mentally and psychologically. So it puts a mental block for you to have a high level of spiritual thinking about this, that the fact that your first baptism took place in the amniotic fluid of our mother's womb. And there we see the European patriarch, they took that idea from her. You see, because the power, I mean, we have a lot of theories of how we came here. We can go on and on. But one thing from our empirical observation, she breaks that water and life is coming from her. Now that is, nobody can't take that away. See, that's power. That's power. See, this is what she has to look at. You see, once you start looking at that from that perspective, then we're on our way to a high spiritual consciousness.
Thank you. Listen up.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back on. You said about how from the Ice Age, how why did they put their women in that position?
Back to
Michael Bradley.
What made him write the book?
No, you said that the women, how they treat their women.
Right. It was Well,
what is the psychology behind their treatment of their women?
Right. When he wrote his book, The Prehistoric Sources of Western Man's Racism, Sexism, and Aggression. Now, the Western world, and definitely Donald Trump, epitomizes all of that. I mean, he's literally coming up out of his own genetic memory bank. Right. Everybody's mad at Donald Trump. I mean, he's working off of his own genetic memory bank. That's his own cave consciousness coming up.
Right.
And the cave consciousness in relation to the woman
is because of what happened in the Ice Age.
Yeah, what happened in the Ice Age?
Okay.
How did they
in the Ice Age? Okay, she became in some cases a burden.
That's what I do want you to expand on.
Because here he was the hunter. He went out to hunt, in the cold in the Ice Age and trying to get food and so forth, and bringing it back to the cave and so forth. So she's there waiting for the foods. It's not like in Africa in the Sun Belt where you're growing food and you're not depending on animals. All right, so you become more of an agricultural society. It was an agricultural society in the Ice Age. All right, so they're depending on this. So he saw her as weak. All right, so out of that is develop a consciousness to demean her.
Right.
And bring her down to a lower level, even to the point that it wasn't for him that she wouldn't even be here, because that's where they developed the religion, the story of the rib.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Even though.
So what is the story of the rib now in relation to that?
Well, it's in the scriptures.
Yeah. What's the symbology behind that story of the rib?
The fact that she doesn't even have the power to be here at the same time as the man.
Right.
Because God made him first.
Yeah.
The rib was taken from him. All right. And her, even though they still show the pictures with Adam with a biblical cord. I mean with the navel.
Right.
The only reason why we got the navel, why they keep painting pictures of Adam, all pictures you see of Adam got a navel.
Right.
Now, sisters, why does Adam got a navel in biblical cord? If anything, you should at least paint a picture of Adam with a scar on his side, where they took the rib. Okay, but there is no scar on the side. There's a navel. But again, this is patriarchal stuff that was developed.
Right.
You see, and this is what I'm saying for us as an African people, we're the oldest people on the planet Earth. Again, so spiritual consciousness is coming up, and the development is out of the sun belt of things all around. Whereas in the Ice Age, it's harsh. Okay, it's cold. They're not only at war with themselves, they're at war with nature itself.
Yes.
So look at our situation today, global warming. Okay, no respect for the elemental forces of the air and the water and all these things. Okay, it's all been about exploitation of all these elemental forces. That's coming out of, again, the fight that they had out of that Ice Age.
Right.
No respect for it. So again, it came out of a culture to exploit these things.
Yeah.
So a culture of exploiting everything, no matter what it is. Okay.
I wonder if I could just jump in there. Sorry, John, I'm going to jump in there because the reason why, if you look at the so-called Eskimos, and they're in a harsh, cold climate, but yet again, they don't go out and murder and kill and whatever. And how would you explain those people there?
Yeah, again, with the Eskimos, keep in mind all these people, no matter who they are, okay, are coming from the earliest Africans who migrated into Europe, who migrated into the Ice Age. We're talking about the Grimaldis,
right?
Okay, these early Homo sapiens, all right, who came from the early hominids, all right. So they migrated to these various regions of the world. So again, when you're looking at the caveman, when you're looking at his elemental forces in terms of the Eskimos, you're looking at two totally different people. We're looking at two totally different migrations.
Right.
Okay, in terms of the early Eskimos, I think they may have been some of the earliest Africans who migrated into various areas. Okay, keep in mind that they are in the sun belt because they're way in the Arctic where they get sun. Okay, now keep in mind, now look at Europe, look at England. How much sunlight do you get here? I mean, even now, you don't get a lot of sunlight. It's cloud, it's overcast, and so forth. So the Eskimos are getting more melanated, more pineal gland activation. That's one of the things that Michael Bradley mentioned in his book, The Prehistoric Sources of Western Man's Racism, Sexual Aggression, that they lack the development of the pineal gland.
Right.
Okay, from the sunlight.
Right. Now that explains it.
Right.
Could you just go into the pineal gland, what the function is?
The pineal, now keep in mind, if you were to take anatomy today,
yeah,
and you wanted to go to be a doctor or so forth, they would tell you the anatomy that the pineal gland has no purpose. What arrogance! As sophisticated as the human body is, but our ancestors in ancient African spirituality and ancient Kemet, they saw the pineal gland as the development of the spirit. It was a gland for spiritual consciousness. It was activated by the sun.
Right.
So on King Tutankhamun, on his gold shrine in the Cairo Museum, he is standing in a 360 degrees perpendicular with the sun Ra activating his pineal gland. That's referred to as the third eye, the spiritual eye. So this is the spiritual consciousness coming from the activation of this gland itself. Now this gland is activated by melanin. All right, melanin is a black substance. All right, that it pulls in the sunlight, and this is what creates a whole spiritual consciousness that how our ancestors saw it. So this is where, if one is living out of the sun belt, then of course that's going to be an underdevelopment of that pineal gland.
And what do you mean by spirituality? What is it? What is the?
Well, it's a spiritual consciousness.
What is spirituality?
Okay,
mean? Because the Greeks space it down to just breath.
Okay.
So what would you say spirituality is?
Spiritual consciousness is seeing a spiritual divinity in things around you. Okay, the rising of the sun, the changes of what we see, the spring solstice right now, life coming all around us. This is how spiritual consciousness developed by natural things. All right, not because someone wrote dogma and wrote it down as religious facts.
What's dogma?
Dogma is when someone takes and writes things down in religion and then cause people to say that this is facts, this belief system. All right, like I talked about earlier, that you were born in sin. That's dogma. All right, this is what I mean by that, and it's written down as though this is the word of God. All right, and then people are taught to believe that. You see, and that's the only thing that we have known, because we are looking at this man-made dogma instead of the natural forces all around us. As I'll go back to the previous things I was saying, had the European culture looked at the natural phenomena and the spiritual phenomena, we wouldn't have no global warming problem now. We wouldn't have polluted water now. You wouldn't build factories on the banks of river banks that you need water to survive. These things we need to survive by, but you have no respect for it because it's exploiting these things. There's no spirituality in relationship to these elemental forces.
Right.
Which is part of that whole spiritual consciousness.
Right.
All right?
See, yeah,
if I cut off your air, how long are you going to live?
Yeah.
If I put my hand over your nose and your mouth, how long are you going to live? Not long. So you better give respect to that. Yeah. We call it shu. Air.
Yeah, okay. So I want to just take you back now. You know, when you say with Dr. Benning, you actually, you as a field, you said you went on the field and it opened your consciousness.
Seeing the reality.
Seeing the reality,
The books in stone, they're there.
Yeah, because in relation to like the things that you can remember, how you can put the information together.
Yes, sir.
You know, was that part of that experience that enables you to?
Well, of course, this took time. Okay, this was. Keep in mind, I've been a victim like everybody else. Is the same dog bit you, bit me too. So I'm not looking at myself as anything special. It's just that I had started to do the research and to return back to Africa, to these monuments and temples. And
roughly how many times have you been?
I can't say how many times. I can tell you how many years.
How many years?
38 years. Because sometimes I go multiple times in 1 year.
Yeah.
So it's been 38 years nonstop. So that's most of my life that I have done this. But that's the spirit and the fire that evoked in me to start this journey. And then when you start on a journey like this, you get into a time warp. You get into a time warp. You're not even conscious of time anymore. I didn't even know I was turning gray until I looked at a video one day.
But I just want to say to anyone who's listening on the radio, he's studying history, but he's looking younger. So I encourage everybody to study history, then you can look like the man himself.
Yeah, I'm not into dyeing my hair and all that kind of stuff to go down into my brain. So I just left it as it is. So I've been to the mountaintop and I climbed the pyramids every year when I was young. See, so. I use that analogy. That's where I got my gray, because I went to the top of the pyramids, climbed them. I got gray. But again, I had to study these temples, monuments. Keep in mind that these biblical scholars, all right, who are part of the Biblical Archaeology Society and so forth, they are still over there plundering temples and tombs and incorporating these things into their religions today. These things are still going on. And that's why the consciousness of our people
and the denial of our African selves. You can say you're going anywhere. You can tell, black folks can tell you they're going anywhere on the planet Earth. But as soon as you bring up Africa, why are you going to Africa?
Yeah.
You know, nobody else says that, you know, but us. You see, because of what they put down into our consciousness.
Right,
About
yeah.
This is the original Taneta land. What am I saying, the Taneta land? This is the original Holy Land. Even if we look at the biblical accounts of these things.
Tar is land, is
right,
land,
right,
yeah.
yeah. Netata, this is the original Holy Land. So, even if we look at the biblical account of all these things, okay, from that point of view, the story opens up with Abraham coming into Africa, coming into Egypt. That's Northeast Africa, all right? Then we see Joseph. Everybody's coming into Africa. He comes into Africa. We get a story of Moses. He grows up in Africa. We get a story of Greek philosophers like Thales, Pythagoras, Socrates. They're coming into Africa, all right? So everybody's coming there. So this is where we have to question, what are they getting there? This is what these ideas come out of. The Greek philosophers came there, got their philosophy. I call it philosophy because they never really understood it, all right, the spiritual system of it. And then we see the Western religions that developed from the early, whether we're looking at the Old Testament or the New Testament, okay, with the Greeks and coming down and before them the Hebrews coming in. Everybody is coming in to get these ideas. So that's why the temples are so important, because they were there when these stories and these others were coming in. So that's where my journey started, by studying. And it didn't come overnight, all right? It's been a journey, just like anything else, and studying the reliefs. See, when I first went to Kemet, the temples will blow your mind. Anybody that will go there to see the pyramids, to see the greatest temple on the planet Earth, Ipit-Asut, the world's first universities, is now called Karnak today. Mind-blowing to walk down between those 134 columns, lotus columns. It'll just blow your mind. But see, you can get captivated by that architectural structure at first. But what blew me away when I start looking at those reliefs?
When you start looking at the what?
The reliefs, that's the writing. The symbols.
How do you say it?
Reliefs, right.
Reliefs.
Yeah, right. The reliefs, that's the Meduneture.
Okay, right.
Okay, well, the Greeks call it the hieroglyphics.
Right, but it's reliefs.
Right, Yeah, so looking at these, the Meduneture, okay, and then starting to study Western culture deeply, studying the Bible, the stories of the Bible, and going back and doing a comparative analysis that these stories were already on the temple. For instance, all of us know about Moses and the bulrushes, is that right?
Yeah.
You know about Moses found the bulrushes?
Yeah.
I take our group to an area called the Memezi House at the Temple of Aset. It's the most southern part of Kemet in Ta-Nehisi, called Nubia today. There we go up into the Memezi House, and what do we see? Aset hiding in the papyrus swamps. Why is she hiding in the papyrus swamps? Because there's an evil brother. Long before the Cain and Abel story, there's an evil brother, okay, of Asar named Set, who killed Asar. So here we have an evil brother killing the good brother. There was no Cain and Abel story yet. Aset, who the Greeks call Isis, had to hide in the papyrus swamps because she feared that Set would kill her child born of a holy birth, an immaculate conception. So she's hiding in the papyrus swamps. So what I do is take the groups in the Memezi House. I got the pictorial pictures of the Bible. I put it right up to the relief, and everybody just gasps because it's the same exact one. The only difference is this one is carved in stone of Asar in a set in the bulrushes. I mean, in the papyrus swamps. But here, as you see the pictorial pictures of Moses in the bulrushes. You see, now there's a line going through across the temple. Okay, why is that line there? Because these temples were under the sand. They only dug them out in the turn of the century to make tourist dollars, not to tell the truth. How many groups go up in here and reveal this? I've never seen any, because most of the time the people want to come here to see the glory of Egypt and so, but they don't want them to come here to think and see where these stories came from. You see. Now, who created these stories? Kemetic Africans of the Nile Valley thousands of years ago. And this is how the religions developed.
So I just want to ask a question, because we had this debate before you came. If the original text comes from Kemet and the Bible then is copied that, does that mean that the Bible Moses is false? They didn't exist, as real people. It was just a copy of a story.
I would say they didn't exist as real people.
So the Moses never exists. Abraham never exists. No,
okay, so let's deal with the story of Moses, and we're going to deal it even from Europeans' perspective.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Now we're going to deal with real personality. I'm going to speak of a real personality here.
And sorry, after this question, I'm going to bring in the next one.
We're going to deal with a real personality. We're not going to. Okay. Now, what real personality am I going to talk about? I'm going to talk about Neb-Petty-Ra Admos the First.
Can you say that again, please?
Neb-Petty-Ra Admos the First.
Right.
He opened up the 18th dynasty. He's a real person. He's at this time. His father, Second and Retau of the 17th dynasty, were fighting a people called the Hyksos. They were invaders. They came in and enslaved the Kemetic Africans for 200 years. They occupied the delta region of Egypt until Neb-Petty-Ra Admos came in and expelled all of the Hyksos out of Egypt. Okay, this is the 18th dynasty. Josephus, a European Jewish historian who lived around 37 to 100 AD, they said they took from Admos a real story of an expulsion of a large people out of Egypt and made a Moses. See, now, Admos, we know we can find him. We can see him, Admos. He's a real person. You can find him in any history book in the world. He's dealing with ancient Egypt. This is the only story that we got of a large group of people being expelled out of Egypt, with Admos, who opened up the 18th dynasty. So this is where we see they took from Kemetic stories into making up of the religions when they came in and occupied it.
Now we know that the Hebrews, who are coming from, we're talking about Sumer, okay? We're talking about the southern part. Now that southern part is black. Well, these are black Hebrews, okay, coming from the southern part of the Tigris Euphrates. But who are invading from the north, from a place called Mitanni, that is present-day Iraq? So you have these two groups of people coming in. These Hebrews are coming up from the south, who, by the way, they're not Hebrews at this time. They don't become Hebrews, so they come in.
What were they before they became Hebrews? What were they called?
They're living down into they're coming from the Elamites. They're coming from the Natufians, who are all noted for being black because of the ancient Cushites. Because ancient Cush ruled over all this area. That's why the Bible opens up with Cush, with ancient Cush. Okay, that ruled over, that came up, the birth of even Egypt is from Cush. Okay.
Well, I'm just going to stop you there because I'm going to have to go and get some smelling salts now because he's just overloading my brain here. And he's warming up for tomorrow. Well, so I'm just letting the Facebook people know.
No, some things I'm drawing from the lecture that I'm going to some of the things I'm drawing from the lecture that I'm going to talk about on Monday.
What are you going to be talking about roughly so people who are listening?
Tomorrow I'm dealing with African divinity and spirituality, the origin of Christianity.
Right.
So that's coming from the whole Christian perspective.
And then and the following lectures are going to be about...
In Birmingham on Monday, I'm going to deal with the African origin of the Bible and the Quran.
Right, okay.
Even though on Sunday, I will be dealing with the lecture that I did here today.
Right.
So originally I was supposed to come in April, and I think we got some schedules.
Right.
We will come around Easter and the Passover. That was originally, that's how it ended up with the titles, with the Bible and Christianity, because of those two holidays, Passover and the resurrection.
Okay.
The Passover was actually the passing the sun over the equator.
Right. Okay.
That's why it's the ram was used, because of the ram, the sun in the constellation of Aries. That's a whole other story.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm gonna let the other question because I could talk to you for days on this.
No, I just got it's cool, man. Yeah, you can get up if you want to get up.
See, the debates come up. See, when we don't have the whole story, we can debate things and go on and on and on, and sometimes it can get very irrational.
Yes.
Right. Because we don't have chronology. We don't have the sources. Okay, the only sources we're drawing from are Western sources.
Yeah.
As I said, we have our consciousness have been circumscribed to think within their diameter. Okay, so if you make a circle, our thoughts and everything is coming from inside the circle. But here, the real knowledge is outside the circle. Okay, so this is what I mean by he who circumscribes the circumference determines the diameter of your thinking. So again, the objective I come with these lectures is not for people to believe in what I'm saying, but to think about what I'm saying. We have a cerebral organ called the brain. This organ is for to think out problems. All right, that's what it's there for. Okay.
So there's one more thing. Now the brother wants to comment. Is how do we extract the practical spirituality, which I know you're touching on, from even like the hieroglyphs, how even though you can know the sounds and how to read the symbols, how do you extract that knowledge into practical?
Okay, well I'll take one of the Medu Netroglyphs. I'll just use one of them. Sarah.
Which is
Sitra.
Sarah is in Saraseti, yeah.
No, Sarah.
Yeah.
Son of God.
Okay.
Okay. Can we tell our babies, the son that's born from our mother's womb, that is a son of God? Can we tell her that the daughter is born is a Sitra, a daughter of God?
What's the daughter's
Sitra.
Sitra.
Okay.
Yeah, Sitra.
Or I get caught into a situation that I got caught into in Dallas. During Dallas, there's a lot of space and people got yards and everything. So every year around December, you got all these plastic white babies all over the place in the yards. Around December, people pull out these plastic white babies out their closets, and a plastic white man and a plastic white female, and they call it the Holy Family. And I asked one brother I saw him putting the white plastic baby in his yard, and I said, what are you doing? And he said, well, I'm teaching my son. He has a son in his arm. He said, I'm teaching my son that this is the Son of God. I said, no, brother, this is a plastic thing that you got out the closet. I said, your son is the Son of God. He said, my son is not the Son of God. This is the Son. I said, no, brother, please understand me. This is a plastic thing that you have in the closet every year, and you put this down, and you've been brainwashed that this is the Son of God, when in fact your son is the Son of God. And that idea came from Sarah. Is still on your ancient African temples. Oh, that's heresy. Get out my yard. See, he can't understand that. He can't understand that his own son is the Son of God. So this is the practical spirituality. Because once we start to see that divinity, that's why I said in the Kemetic language, when you asked me earlier, and I said what? Teta, Kemet, Neta, Ankh, Senejeb. Everlasting black divine life. That's what we got to get to. Because we've been taught even to see ourselves. Look at how we're literally exterminating ourselves in America as black folks.
Over here as well.
Right. Yeah, this community's been totally wiped out. Because that brainwashing has been so deep of the hatred of our own black divinity. Okay, that's what we see here. I see your physical body, but in there is a black divinity, a black spirituality. That's what's making you.
So, as the son or the sister of God, then, what kind of mentality or behavior do you encapsulate or take on?
Power, a spiritual power. I mean, look at the power of this little plastic thing or animation thing or a picture. Look at the power people do with that, because they've been brainwashed into that. So imagine if you take that power that they've been putting into these little objects, and take that same power and power that into that baby, and let that baby grow up. You are the Son of God. You see, so it'd be impossible for us to destroy each other, understanding that each one of us is a son of God, or a Sitra, a daughter of God.
What is the correct terminology? Because I don't really like the word God. So what is the correct?
Well, our ancestors use many terms of God, depending on where we are at different times. Even in ancient Kemet, at one time, Kemet is so old. Like for instance, at one time we had Ptah, and then in the Middle Kingdom of Kemet you had Amen. But keep in mind, let me also mention, because we spoke of the goddess, they all had a goddess, because Ptah had Sekhmet. And it was a holy family. The son was Khonsu. In the Middle Kingdom of Kemet, it was Amen. And the mother was Mut. This is where we get the term mother from, by the way, Mut. Okay? And then we see Khonsu was a spiritual child. So all of them had that spiritual trinity and black divinity in that spiritual family. So Amen, that we still say at the end of our prayers, Amen. The Greeks took Amen up out of Africa. This is where Amen comes from.
What does Amen mean?
Amen is the spiritual God, the spiritual divinity.
So Amen is spiritual.
Now keep in mind, Amen is in an anthropomorphic form or human form. When you see him, he's jet black, jet black, blacker than your shirt. Okay, and he's in a human form. Now, was Amen in this human form, in a human form like us? No, but what they did for us to understand it, they anthropomorphized it. Okay.
What does anthropomorphize mean?
In a human form. Okay. Now what is scientists bringing to us today? Dark matter. Dark matter is everywhere. It's right in this room right now. We can't see it. It's in us. So Amen represented the invisible spirit.
Right.
It's in us. It's everywhere. Permeates throughout the whole universe. What they did was anthropomorphized it in a human form for us to understand it. They took air called Shu and put it in a human form for us to understand it. This is what they did. But now, was it in the human form? No, it's a spiritual force that's all around us. But for our human consciousness to understand it, only understanding it from how we look. So we are the first ones who anthropomorphize God in a human image. long before the European religions were even on the scene. You know, these images, they have God in the picture of God looking out the heavens and all this kind of stuff. Ancient Africa had that spiritual story. So back to your question, the name of God in the early period, Ptah, Middle Kingdom, Amen. We also say Akhenaten had Aten. All right. Now Europeans would come and say, "Oh, that's polytheism. That's many gods." No, it's different names at different periods of time, just like in the Bible. At one point, God is called Elah. Another point, God is called Elohim. Another point, God is called Yahweh. Another point, God is called Jehovah. Is that polytheism? No, this is different names at different periods of time. Okay, now we can go and see Ella Demare. We can go to West Africa and see the Yorubas. Okay, because the Orishas and the Netarus are the same. So we also had the name for the spiritual divinity. All right, so we also had among the Dogon, they also had very similar to ancient Kemet, Amma. All right, for the spiritual name. So depending on where we are on the continent, it's the same spiritual consciousness of this divinity or deity or God coming up out of African people's consciousness. Our ancestors created it, but yet we are looking at it coming from a European world when they weren't even on the scene yet.
I'm gonna pass the baton over now. Okay.
Yeah, greetings. Yeah, I got just one question ish. Yeah. I've been to the British Museum and I've seen lots of things of the tombs of that pharaohs. Yeah. Some of these pharaohs have locks. Explain for me how come they have locks and the concept of how come it's gone back that far. The locks. Explain to her why they had locks.
Well, one of the ones who wore locks very prominently is Nima Atra Amenemhet III of the Middle Kingdom. And notice I said Amenemhet. What did you hear? Amenemhet. Amen.
Amen.
See, that's how you knew the God was worshipped. You see, because like Khafra, we see when you hear Khafra, Khafra built the Great Pyramid. What name were you hearing? Ra. You're hearing Ra. So we see the power of Ra was power during that time. Okay. So again, that was the hair. This is with the Amenemhet, and I take brothers who got locks on the trip and put them right next to Amenemhet.
Yeah, this stuff. Yeah, the ton Rasta.
So this is the hair that they had. Now, when they were a youth, they had what is called a haru lock. The haru lock hang off the side. They hang off the side right here. But as they became older, then they wore the locks. Now the locks we see more prominent in the Middle Kingdom. All right, that's the blackest part of Egypt. I mean, during the time of the Middle Kingdom too, by the way. So you see the locks are very prominent during that particular period. So again, they had the locks because that was their hair that they wore. You see, and it showed the power, that they had in the hair. Now keep in mind, hair, we can get into a whole nother consciousness even about hair, because it's.
Yeah, I know, because your wife talks a lot about the hair, and that's why I'm asking you about that as well.
You see, we can look at it as a receptive antennas, and that's a whole nother energy. Now keep in mind that keratin is hair this like our hair. It's protein. The reason why our hair is the way it looks is because of protein. Straight hair actually doesn't have any protein. See, when people say bad hair and good hair, but the bad hair is actually the straight hair. I'm not making a joke out of this. This is the real reality. It doesn't have a lot of keratin, right?
Our hair's got protein.
Because of what? The sun.
The
sun belt again. It's back to the sun. Okay. Whereas and when you lack of sun, you start to lack that protein, so the hair becomes straight. So yeah, in the British Museum you have a lot, and considering that you spoke of the British Museum, I think one of the most powerful. Even though you have a lot of the Nesu, Pharaoh, by the way, is only means great house. Okay, it has nothing to do with the name of the king. The Hebrews took the name and said Pharaoh. It means literally great house. The names that they used was Nesu. Nesu would be translated today as king. And even though you have a lot of Nesus in the British Museum that they stole, just like we were stolen from Africa, and they put in these museums. Belzoni was one of those plunderers, and you see Ursama At Rasa Tepan Rava Mesumari Amen, Min Keparatudi Mays, and all these great Nesus are in the British Museum. And even though you see them, but one of the most powerful stones that's in the British Museum, and I always make sure I stop by and see that stone, that's called the Memphite Theology Stone. And what's powerful about this Memphite Theology Stone is that this is the earliest creation story
This is where the idea of Genesis, by the way, it's not a Hebrew word, it's a Greek word. Genesis means the beginning. This is coming from that Memphite theology stone. Here we see Ptah, that I said earlier, says, let there be light. Now, where have you heard that before? That's in Genesis. Here we see the creation in this Memphite theology stone is telling about the creation of a Sar and a Set, the first man and woman. Created simultaneously, too, by the way. There was no rib. I'll go back to that story again. That's what makes this stone so powerful, where Ptah is creating the heavens and the earth. Now, when we look at James Usher is a European in around the 1600s who said the world was created on October 9th, okay, at 9 a.m., all right, 4004 BCE, or before the Christian era.
Well, that should be a big holiday. The creation of the world, October 9th.
Okay, was it October 22nd? One of them in October. The creation of the world. The question is, where is James Usher getting this from? James Usher is getting this from the Memphite theology stone that goes back to over 4,000 BCE. This is where he's drawing that from. So he's incorporating it into, like the Europeans are saying this, or creating this, and it becomes part of the religious dogma, because the creation of the world is 6,000 years ago. That's the creation of Adam and Eve. That was taken from the Memphite theology stone. So now that stone is called the Shabaka stone. This is a Cushite African from ancient Cush who found it and that Memphite theology story, all right? And he's the one that recreated it. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's called the Shabaka stone. And I think that's one of the most powerful pieces in the British Museum.
Is that big black?
It's a big stone with like a soaker and a hole in the middle. Okay, yeah. Right. That's called the Memphite theology stone. That Memphite theology stone, now it's called the Memphite theology stone because of ancient Menefer. And there we see Ptah. That was the ancient city of Ptah, of ancient Menefer, it is right outside of Giza in Egypt today. Mm-hmm. So this is what makes the Cushite Kemetic culture so powerful, because we have the evidence. There's the evidence there. We're not talking about something outside of ourselves here. We're talking about that which has been stolen, okay, and corrupted, and rewritten for Europeans, for the European world, and their religions. And sometimes that's hard for us to grasp.
Yeah, I just want to say it's an absolute pleasure. Mm-hmm. I've been following your work bit by bit in whatever material that I can pick up. I have to say it's an absolute treat to be here. I'm ecstatic. I've got two questions. You touched, first question, you touched a little bit on dark matter. And I wanted to know what your connection would be, or if there's any knowledge that you know about with that and the atom. Because our scientists today, they talk about the atom being almost, 90% empty space. So is there a connection between...
Okay, from the Western world, their first idea of the atom comes through the Greeks, the Greek philosophers, okay? Is it Democritus? And Dr. George E.M. James, in his book, familiar with Dr. George E.M. James' Stolen Legacy. In fact, he talks about the fire atoms that the Greeks stole up out of the ancient chemists, Memphite, in fact, going back to the Memphite theology story. And it talks about the whole creation of these fire atoms. Now, keep in mind that our ancestors understood the atom. Now, it's like everything else. Where's your consciousness at when you start to go at something? If your consciousness is evil, then of course you're going to unlock, using their term, the Pandora box. That evil will be opened up, okay? But if your consciousness is a consciousness of spiritual harmony with Mutnetchit, or Mother Nature itself, then there's wonderful things that can open up. Now I use that analogy in relationship to the atom, and my ancestors talked about the Memphite theology story. For thousands of years. From that understanding of that atom is how they built the pyramids. Inside of the atom, there are triangular objects that looks just like the pyramid.
that made ancient Kemet. Now, if evil is coming out, if you're looking at and want to do evil things, how did the Europeans look at the atom? The same way they did us, divide and conquer it. They split the atom. In the splitting of the atom, then what have you created?
Atomic bombs.
Okay. Destruction. And now you got these colliders. They got one in Texas, I think.
The hydrogen collider.
Yeah, and what do these hydrogen colliders do?
Yeah, they smash chemicals.
Okay, right, and that's like okay. Let's say you come here from somewhere else, and you don't know what a car is.
You just see these objects running around.
You don't know what it is. All right.
But you want to find out what a car really is. So you're going to take two cars
and you're going to smash them together. Now that's a car. Okay. Because is that understand because you got an atom smasher that now you have tried to understand these powerful forces of Mut Netchet, that you have now collided something and now you think that you know what it is because you're trying to see something deep in a spiritual realm that cannot be seen with the naked eye in this physical form. See, this is where you come when one is operating out of evil. So what they do, they created the most destructive forces on the planet Earth that they don't want anybody to have, because this money that we got, whether it's the American dollars or the British pound, is backed by weapons of mass destruction.
Well, it's true to say that they have a physical connection to the universe as opposed to we have a spiritual connection. So they will have to, do tests and all this kind of stuff because that's the only way that they can actually figure out what's what.
Exactly.
They have to go around the park instead of cutting through the middle type of thing.
Yes, sir. It's the foundation of what we started with. When I talked about the Ka, it's going right back to what we talked about because the Romans didn't understand spiritual things. They took when they saw the mummy and they saw the ideas of ancient Kemet and how the Ka was going up, okay, the spiritual body, they took it literally. That the physical body would get up out the grave and go to heaven. And that's the foundation of the Western version of Christianity to this very day, that you'll be a physical resurrection. When it was a spiritual resurrection. Now why did Kemet, why did they use a mummy? Let's look at that. How did they come up with that idea of the mummy? Mut Netchet again. Let's look at a caterpillar. It's crawling on the ground. Now this is an insect that crawls on the ground. Now let's think about it for a minute. Now here's something that goes through a cocoon. Okay? And in that process is going through a metamorphosis. And in that metamorphosis, and this is going to be this is interesting here. In that process, what is it called? Now what's that process of that metamorphosis called? No. It's called a chrysalis. Chrysalis. It's a chrysalis. It's going through the metamorphosis. Where'd they get the idea of the Christ wrapping up in a mummy? Okay. Once that metamorphosis takes place, what happens to this? Once there was a caterpillar, what are you looking at now?
Lovely butterfly.
A beautiful butterfly that flies. They went through a whole transformation from this the thing that crawled on the ground. It goes into a cocoon, goes through a metamorphosis called a chrysalis because it's inside the shell. It's the chrysalis process. And then it opens up in a butterfly. So our ancestors mummified the body, the physical body, to go through this. The Ka, they called it the Ka, the Gnostics, who was a conduit, so to say, who drew from ancient African spirituality. At that time, the Romans were on the scene now. But the Romans feared them because the Gnostics understood this whole process. So they called it the caress. Okay? But in ancient Kemet, they wrapped the body up for a metamorphosis to take place. But the Khat, we call mummy today, it stayed in the earth. But it was the metamorphosis, the spiritual body rose up. The Romans couldn't see that. They didn't understand it. Because why? It's spiritual. It's spiritual. Spirituality. It's still what they can't see today. You see? And that's why you got the European images in the pictorial art and the Western art of Jesus. I call the Serapis Jesus. Because every time you see a European Jesus, we got to be specific. That's Serapis. He was created at the conference of Nicene in 325 AD. These ecumenical conferences, these religious European gangsters got together in the formulation of the religious world order at that time. Okay? And that's why they shut down Kemet. Because Kemet had the evidence through the temples that I've been talking about.
And then they're able to pull these ideas, but they corrupted them. So as I said, in the copying of somebody's paper, they didn't get the whole story right because they took it literally. The physical body will rise up out the grave one day, you see, because they didn't understand the spiritual body called the Sahu, because this is the Sahu Ka. It's called the Ka Sahu, the spiritual body, you see. So when the Byzantine Romans came on the scene, they didn't understand it, that translation. They took it literally. So you have 300 years of the Ptolemies, okay. After Alexander's death, they took over, usurped the throne. The Romans come in and usurped it from the Ptolemies. That's 400 years. Then you got the Byzantine Romans and the formulation of Western version of Christianity, okay, which is another almost 400 years. You got 1,000 years of Europeans' occupation of ancient Kemetic knowledge, who controlled this at this time. 1,000 years of copying and plagiarizing and building that Alexandria library and copying from these papyruses and the formulation and the making of these various Bibles. An intelligent question to ask: where's the first one? Going back to our original conversation, in Egypt. This is what developed the Koine version of the Bible around 52 AD. All right. So Egypt plays the major part in all of this. Coming down to also Hieronymus Eusebius. That becomes the Rome Latin Vulgate version of the Bible. That means at this time, Roman Catholicism is ruling the world through the Latin Vulgate version of the Bible. Here, even in England, that was the Bible too that they used, until King James rebelled against the Pope of Rome. Now the question is, why did King James rebel against the Pope of Rome? And it was Tyndale, here in England, who was starting to break away from the Latin Vulgate version of the Bible. All right, but what brought James in on it was the fact that when the Catholic Church had Portugal and Spain kidnapping our African ancestors from the continent, Portugal and Spain was making a lot of money off of the resources of kidnapping of our ancestors from the continent. The other European powers like England, the Dutch, the French, they were observing this and seeing this power that that the Portugal and Spain was developing. So King James said that they wanted in on the slave trade. And the Pope did not want the other Europeans in on the slave trade. Why? It would reduce the money coming to the church. All right, so they wanted to keep them out of it. So James said later for Rome, in fact, we're going to formulate our own Bible. In fact, we're going to call it the King James Version. That's why it's called version. And those Bibles that you find in the hotel, the Bible's always in the drawer in the hotel. And the first page you open up, King James Version, diligently compared and revised. Now, an intelligent person would ask, what does it mean by diligently compared and revised? That means you're copying from other sources, okay, in the making of this thing. So he got Francis Bacon, Henry Saville, and others to sit down, and Shakespeare to sit down and write the King James Version of the Bible. And that was because of us, because the Pope did not want them in on the slave trade. Right. And that's how they broke away from the Latin Vulgate version of the Bible. So all these Bibles down to the millennials. In fact, even America and England almost went to war in 1901 because America is the power. We're the power this day. We want our Bible. Everybody else got a Bible. Why can't we have a Bible? So England wanted their Bible to be the last Bible. Okay, since it's the power of the day, and they're ruling the world and everything, and so America wrote the New American Bible, a New Bible Express. I use Express from Heaven. No, Express from Heaven. Okay. but so in 1901 they almost went to war.
Okay, we have to just wind down a little bit now. I'm going to ask Jeff to give the mic to Jeff, please, just to let people about the information was taking place over this weekend. Jeff, to look at Jeff's eyes. Jeff looks burn out, man.
Before we even say that, and if one wants to look at one of the most powerful pamphlets that Dr. Ben put together, even though he wrote a lot of books, I think one of his most powerful is one of his smallest, thin little pamphlet called The Chronology of the Bible. It's a very, gives you all these various Bibles. And keep in mind, and I didn't mention it and got to mention it, we got to mention, the Per Emaru, coming forth by day and by night. This is the earliest holy text
okay, called the Per Emaru, that even when Wallace Budge, when he was robbing the papyruses in Egypt, that's how you see the Per Emaru. Now he cut it up, and now it's all stretched across the walls in the British Museum. That's what that is, the Per Emaru. Coming forth by day and by night. These are the earliest spiritual texts before the Western Bibles were even in existence. And I'll be dealing with that on Monday, on the origin of the Bible and the Quran. Wanted to make an announcement?
Yeah, so people would like to hear more, which I'm sure they will, from what the discussion is. The place to be is the Art Center on Friday. So it's this Friday. Doors open at 6 o'clock. Program will start at 7 o'clock. But also there's a whole weekend, because on Sunday and Monday he will also be in Birmingham. And as you can see, there'll be a host of speakers, because this is Africa Liberation Day. And just for those of you who don't know what Africa Liberation Day is, as a quick synopsis, African Liberation Day was actually started in 1963, and it came out of Africa Freedom Day, something that Kwame Nkrumah set in motion. So the Organization of African Unity in 63 put together a day when African people could come together and commemorate a lot of the things that has happened to us, commemorate the Ma'afa, which we suffered as a people. So that falls on the 25th of May each year. So since 1975, the Pan-African Congress movement has been commemorating this day. So I think this made the 44 years the Pan-African Congress movement has been doing this. So I mean, everybody is welcome to come to Birmingham to help to commemorate with us. Apart from Baba Ashra Kwesi, we will also having Brother Vasco Stevenson, and he'll be looking at the role that in quoted comment West Indian played in the building of the Panama Canal. And it's a fascinating insight, because it will blow your mind some of the things that actually happened. And I'm knowing especially a lot of people from the Caribbean, such as Jamaica, Barbados, and so forth, would know somebody back in their family who would have had some connection with the building of the canal. We will also having Patricia Daly. Professor Daly is an Oxford-based professor, and she'll be looking at basically the colonizing of Africa, because, as she says, there's a whole scramble for Africa all over again, and we just have to look at what's going on. We just have to look at the role of the Chinese are playing in Africa right now, and the role of other European powers, especially powers like France, for instance, who never really left, because France had imposed in Africa the colonial tax, which even after supposed independence, those African states under Francophone rule is paying France 500 billion per year. 500 billion per year as France says, payment for the independence, payment for the efforts that France put in. And also their currency is given to them by France, is controlled by France, the CFA. And recently there's a brother, I think he's from Benin, has been protesting against that. And for his protests, I know he was locked up in Senegal. He's recently deported from Cote d'Ivoire because they do not want to know. Because the French, as the Italian fascists have said recently, without that income coming in from Africa, France would not be in the top 10 world economies. So that's something we got to bear in mind. And then we'll also be having Dr. Erica McInnes. She's a clinical psychologist. And what we'll be doing at LD this year, we'll be giving over most of the first day as for youth conference. So we're gathering some youth organizations up and down the country, bringing them together to look at what's really happening with the youths. Why this internalizing violence against each other. And going from London, we'll be having the Manhood Academy. We'll be represented. We'll be also having the Black People's Giving, the BPG, and also AWF, African World Federation. So they'll be coming up from London. We're also having groups from from Birmingham, and groups will be coming down from Manchester. So that will be led by Erica McGuinness, that whole conference. We'll be also having Kimani Nahusi, and some of you may be familiar with him. He was based for many years in this country. I think now he's based at Temple University, and he'll be looking at Africa, Pan-Africanism, and what it means, and how we can actually start putting Pan-Africanism into practice. And by that I mean having an Afrocentric view of the world and shaking off the Eurocentric view, similar to what Baba Kwesi was saying about Christianity, because that's part of the whole package that has been given to us. So he'll be looking at that. Apart from that, we have solidarity messages from organizations, both national and international, each year. And we'll be also having a African market area with up to 50 to 60 stalls of, entrepreneurs, African people getting together, trading, going to Africa, bringing back goods, because as we can see, when the 60s rolled out, after the 1945 Pan-African Congress, which by the way was held here in Manchester, when African countries started, African leaders, African personalities started to get up and say, look, it's about time we get independence for Africa. It's about time now we have put in another effort. Europe start to step out. And when that was being rolled out, that we can see that we were given, what? A flag to fly, maybe a national anthem to sing, but who still held the economy of those countries? When Nkrumah said from colonialism to neo-colonialism, which we're still in a state of neo-colonialism. So that's what we got to bear in mind. So that's something that we are fighting against, and we have got to bring it to the realization of people that Africa was never given independence. And we can see, as recession hitting Europe and the Western economies, they are more dependent on Africa today than ever before. I mean, Britain, for example, extracts over $1 trillion a year from Africa, and yet it boasts about how much aid it gives Africa. So we can see there's a massive imbalance there. It's just a folly. It's Africa that's feeding the West, not the West feeding Africa. So all that we've got to bear in mind. So that's what African Liberation Day hopes to bring all that information out and help to educate our people. So I'd like to extend a visit to everybody who can make it to Birmingham on the 26th and the 27th, because it would truly be a memorable event. And I'd just like to pass the mic to Terry, who would be talking about the tour at the British Museum.
Yo, this is Terry, Mr. Riggs. Or you can call me Ola, that's my African name. What it is I'm just apologizing for what's happening on Friday, because the Friday has been moved to Tuesday. It's a big giant bonus out of this whole Liberation Day, because Dr. Ashra Kwesi is going to give us a tour
Uninterrupted on Tuesday.
On a Tuesday.
Uninterrupted.
Uninterrupted, yeah.
Uninterrupted.
Uninterrupted. Yeah, go on. You say it.
Uninterrupted.
Uninterrupted on Tuesday, as I say it. Anyway, we're going to be doing a massive tour through the British Museum, and we're going to go to the obelisk on the Tuesday. If you want to get any forms of information, you go to the Manhattan Center, you sign up or whatever before Monday. So get your name down, make sure you get there, because it is going to be in a historical time, because he hasn't done the British Tour Museum, and it's something that we can experience as a family once again. So for us to able to attend will be a great honor to be involved in this situation. So, and if I'm you, I'll even take the kids off school and bring them to the museum if you could. But if you can't, make your own way and get the pleasure of getting this information, because this information is vital.
I just want to. I think we originally had it scheduled for Friday, and I want to apologize because we did not want to have on my mind to come to the lecture, and of course that would cause us to try to do it real fast. Whereas on Tuesday, that's what I meant by uninterrupted. We can just do the museum, and whatever time we have, we can go ahead and do it, question and answers, without worrying about another event at the same time. So that would be.
Okay, then we just. Next DJ is stepping up on us. Kwesi?
Yes, sir.
This is your life, and we want to present this on
Wow.
behalf of the Speakers Club.
Oh,
so please give
this
Kwesi
is a
clap.
memorable
Come on,
piece.
clap.
Asante Sana.
Yeah.
Asante Sana for that. And the Speakers Club Award. This will be an honorable piece on my shelf, my brother.
Yeah, we set up the
Asante
first
Sana to all of you.
the first Speakers Club award.
I'm holding a mic in my hand, and it's a mic of the statue here, right here. That's
Yeah, so that's from the Speakers Club Awards.
Speakers Club Award.
Yeah, to
Great.
Ashra for his historic knowledge from the Speakers Club. You know, so
Okay.
yeah, outstanding contribution.
Yes,
once
sir.
Again. Thank you.
Asante Sana.
Once again, I'd like to thank the team for taking their time out and coming down. I know you've got a heavy schedule tomorrow, so we really appreciate you for coming here.
Oh,
And
I want to
all
thank
success.
I want to thank this. I call it as Bobby Wright, peace be upon him, who wrote the Psychopathic Racial Personality. He called it a communiversity. So here at the radio station and the Speakers Club, this is a communiversity, the community coming together to educate, to liberate. That's how we have to see this. We can't expect that because we sit in European classrooms, we're being educated. In many cases, we're being trained to do jobs for Europeans. So I want to thank the communiversity and also the name of the radio station. Bless Radio Show. Yes, for this African communiversity today. Asante Sana. Many thanks.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, bro. Thank you, bro. Here's the mic. It's a nice piece.
Thank you. Yeah, we got it. It's the first Speakers Club Awards stuff.
Okay. Well, hopefully, some of the people who were calling in with the debate, maybe they gave them something to think about.
Definitely. Yeah. That's right. Yeah, well, thank you for everything, yeah?
Yes, sir, brother. Thank you, brother. I like that piece you got on, too.
Oh, thank you.